on now. If Michael, you want to start the recording.
Sure.
And welcome to our April, I had to about that, Parks, Recreation, Waterfront, and Resiliency Committee meeting. Thanks to my co-chair, Kate, I see her, Kay, and Ryan, who will take minutes, and Michael, who is the Zoom facilitator. He's going to give some ground rules so we can make this meeting as efficient and fair as possible.
All righty, folks. Most of you have heard this before, and I'm a little robotic and stuff, but
do you feel like helping me make the French
all right. First rule is everyone stays muted. So please make sure, unless you are called on to speak, that your microphone is muted, or I will mute it for you. The way that the agenda typically works is that Trevor will introduce the agenda item. We will have a presentation normally from a city agency or nonprofit or some other group about the topic. And then Trevor will first take questions from the community board members, after which he will then open up questions to the public. We use the raise hand feature for this. So what we ask is that during the community board section of questions, that the public don't raise their hands yet, because it becomes very confusing when there's a lot of hands up and we have to decipher who's a board member and who's not. And then once we ask the public for questions, you can raise your hand and we will call on you. Questions and comments are limited to 2 minutes. We have this very obnoxious timer that we like to put up, so you will see that. If you prefer to see people's faces rather than what is being shared on the screen, at any time, you can change that by when the screen is being shared. If you just go to the menu on the top of your screen, you can swap the video view so that you can see the faces of people in the meeting rather than what's being shared on the screen. The other controls are down at the bottom. There's a black menu bar. You'll see participants. If you open that, that's where the function is to raise your hand. So we ask you to use that. We also ask you to use the chat for attendance. So if you are a member of the public, if you can just, or even a presenter tonight, basically anyone who's not a community board member, we ask you to sign in to the chat with your name, and if you're affiliated with an organization, the organization that you're affiliated with. As usual, the chat is set to only come to me as the host of the meeting. We only use it for attendance purposes as well as for technical issues. So if you're having a technical issue about something, let me know in the chat and I'll try to keep my eye on it. Also for presenters, if there's links to things that you want to share, send them to me and then I can send it out to everybody in the meeting. I think, if for those of you who are joining us on the phone, your controls are a little different. To mute and unmute yourself, it's *6, and to raise your hand to ask a question, it's *9. And I believe that covers everything.
Thank you, Michael. And one other thing I'm going to, do you have the agenda to share? Because I'm going to make a switch on the agenda. Primarily because I've got some news from Joanne about 20 minutes ago. So it might make things a little easier. We're going to stick to that, pretty much the order after the swap of number 3 for number 4. Thank you, Michael. First up, for the last 2 minutes, the minutes were sent. Are there any objections to the minutes for February and March? There being none, we'll move to attendance. Ryan, if you want to call attendance for the committee.
Trevor Holland.
Yes.
Kay Webster.
Yes, and I'm the vice chair, not co.
Oh. My fault.
Vice.
Brian Gillum. Yes. David Adams.
Yes.
Yaron Altman. Yaron Altman.
I don't see him on, Ryan.
Carlin Chan. Carlin Chan.
Yes.
Valentina Jones.
Yes. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah, got you, Carlin.
Valentina Jones.
I'm sorry. Yes, and I want to speak before the park manager. Thank you.
Michael Marino,
Yes.
Robin Chattel,
Yes.
Josephine Velez,
Yes.
Troy Velez.
Don't see him on.
That's it.
Okay, first up, Val, if you want to speak in public comments. Michael, if you want to start the timer.
Okay. I'm sorry. Let me. Oh, okay. On behalf of the Power Partners, Lower East Side Power Partnership, we had contacted the Parks Department about the lights at the East River Park. We were contacted this week, I think on Tuesday, saying that Con Edison would probably be out today to take care of the issue. I think because of the weather, I did not see Con Edison out here, and I'd look onto the park. So I contacted the person from the Parks Department, and they said they will follow up tomorrow and they will get back to me. Hopefully I will have something else to say by the full board meeting. That's when I told them the next meeting would be, because I didn't see any Con Ed out here. That's it. I mean, I could get further, but that's it. They're basically, Power Partnership was contacted with a complaint about the lights out in East River Park, and we followed up. And so we'll follow up before the full board meeting. Thank you.
Thank you. Parks Manager update.
Good evening, everyone. So basically now we've been focusing in parks on really trying to do a good cleanup for the spring. One of the issues that we are dealing with the good weather is and more graffiti, a lot of homeless issues and a lot of drugs. We've been working with PD and PEP to really address those issues, but they've been really, really problematic at certain parks. There's a couple good things going on in parks now. We're going to do a mass hiring. I sent Michael the link, but we're going to be hiring over 200 people, seasonal staff. They could be anywhere from 18 to whatever age. It doesn't really matter. It's an 8-month line. What we're trying to do now is utilize these staff to work PM hours to help us keep parks open later. So like big parks, we will have a PM staff working to 10 o'clock. That will kind of help us minimize graffiti, illegal dumping, and all the other problematic issues that hit these parks. If anyone wants me to forward them the link, I can forward them the link. And on this Saturday, we're having a volunteer program at Tompkins that starts at 10 o'clock. Anyone wants to come and help us clean up some of the hoard areas or clean up the park, we would highly appreciate it. That's it for me.
Jamil, you said you sent me the link, but I don't have it. And I know we were emailing back and forth yesterday about a lot of things, so maybe I missed it.
I'll forward it to you again.
All right, I'll put it in the chat for everybody.
Yeah, I mean, anyone who hasn't been working needs a job. They could be anyone. They could be an older gentleman. We don't care. We're looking to hire staff. Right now, our numbers are very low, and I believe that there's going to be a buyout, so we're going to lose staff. So we're trying our best to make sure we have staff for this next part of the year. So it's anyone, a young kid out of school who needs work, they could forward me their resume. I'll put it in for them. We just really need staff right now.
That's good to hear. And before I see, well, I'm going to ask the committee if they have any questions, and we're going to keep this brief, but I do see Kay. I just want to ask one question about the hiring of staff. That's from what budget? Is that an addition to the budget, or that part of your?
I think it's addition to the budget. I'm not sure where the money's coming from exactly, but we had several meetings this week about it.
Yeah. Some of the money is coming from the feds. It's
Sam, can you introduce yourself really quickly?
Oh, sorry, I'm Sam Biederman. I'm Chief of Staff for the Parks Department. So just point of fact, some of the money is coming from the federal bailout to the municipalities. So it's just very rare for us to have gotten money from the federal government. So it's sort of unique. And I just want to add on to that plea to get people to apply for jobs. If you've got people in your life who would like to be lifeguards, we also need a lot of them too. So that is, there are also many, many opportunities there this summer.
Appreciate that. Thank you. Kay.
Yeah, hi. Thanks, Trevor. Hi, Jamal. That's great. Jamal, I would love to have one of those flyers sent to me. I'd like to post it. Also, I had thought you were coming to Sarah Roosevelt Park this Saturday. Or is that Jonathan coming?
No, we have two events going on. Johnson will be there this Saturday. I'm sorry, I got the wrong park. You're totally right. It is Sarah D. It's not Tompkins. I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I just got my COVID shot. I'm not in the best of mind right now, but
you're doing pretty good.
It is a bad night, but a good day. It is Sarah D. The area we spoke about, Kay, we will be there trying to really clean up the Horde area. We're gonna have PD and PEP present to really look at some of the issues we're having in the park. There's a lot of increased drug activity, especially by some of the fields. We're trying our best to do a good job of really cleaning it up for just as the weather improves, we want families to come out and utilize the park as best as possible.
Yeah, thank you. Thanks, Jamal. Thanks very much.
Okay, also there's a work order on for the garden. So it should be done Monday or Tuesday. I will speak to our shops division tomorrow and make sure the plumber comes out and fixes the box.
Okay, thanks, Jamal.
Jamal, one quick question before we let you go. Val had mentioned about the lights. Do you have any update on that?
So we did a service request to DOT. DOT made a ticket. It went out to Con Ed. Con Ed was supposed to come out today. They didn't come out today. I know yesterday we did a light survey of East River. It's not in good shape. There's over 100 lights out. I will follow up tomorrow morning with my deputy chief to see if DOT has any direction of what Con Ed is doing right now. Right now it's a Con Ed issue.
Understood. Thank you for that update. Thank you.
Trevor, could you say, so if I'm getting a lot of requests about that, who should I send them to expedite on the East River lights? It sounds like you're saying.
If they want to send it to me, it's not a problem. At this point, we're just really waiting on Con Ed to resolve the electrical issue. That's what it seems to be the problem right now.
So they should contact Con Ed?
I mean, they can contact me and I'll speak to anyone about the issue. Right now, we're just waiting on Con Ed to resolve the issue right now with the lighting, the electrical part of it.
Okay, thank you.
All right, thank you, Jamil. Move to the next item. As I mentioned before, we're going to do a swap of the agenda. Next up will be public access at PS 184, the Trust for Public Land Playground. We have talked, Michael, I see a hand raised and I don't know if that's a committee member.
It's Christine Datz Romero from Lower East Side Ecology Center. It's actually there was a question for Jamil about when the water will be turned on in parks, and I can probably answer that because Jamil and I talked about that yesterday, and he did put a ticket in for the plumber to come down to our neighborhood to start turning on water.
Yeah, I issued a request to several parks throughout District 3 that need to get water cut on. So I'll touch base with our plumbers to make sure they could be on top of it as quickly as possible. Sorry, my son just woke up. So with several parks that we need to get cut on. I'll be on top of it. I'll email them tomorrow morning again and see where we are with the status of all these parks.
Jamil, also for the areas that you do not cover, I know it's a small area, so we don't have two parks managers, but also the Esplanade area. There are a bunch of water fountains and irrigation systems, and none of those systems are on. So if you could pass that message on to have the plumber turn those on also.
Not a problem at all.
Not a problem. All right. Back to the agenda, public access SPS 184. If you remember, for the last few months, we've been trying to bring this to the agenda to talk about the fact that the playground has been closed ever since it opened. Pretty nice space. I know the Trust for Public Land was involved. Also, Coastal Resiliency money for the BMCR was also involved, but unfortunately it's been closed. So I'm gonna have Joanne from TPL give an update on this. And Joanne, you sent me the email, correct? I don't wanna mistake.
It was me who sent you, yes.
Okay,
Joan,
okay,
my name is
thank you.
Joan. Thanks.
Joan, sorry.
That's okay, no worries. Everyone makes that mistake.
Joan, do you need to share the screen? Do you have slides or is it just an oral presentation?
Gosh, I wasn't asked to do slides, so it's just oral. I'm just gonna, sorry,
No problem.
I could have done slides. I got loads of slides. Anyway, hey, everybody, thanks for having me. I'm the Deputy Director of the Playgrounds Program at the Trust for Public Land, which worked with the school and community to renovate PS 184, which opened, as you know, in November of 2019, right before COVID. We would have loved it to have been open for the community during COVID. And the reason that it is not open is that the city has not added to the budget in 3 years to pay for schoolyards to playgrounds programs, of which there are about 250 across the city. We have an agreement with the city that says all of our playgrounds are schoolyards to playgrounds, but the language around the funding is very vague. And so it's kind of been a hot potato of, oh, it's DOE money, oh, it's parks money, oh, it's this money. We've been trying to advocate to get the funding for 2 years. And today I have some promising news about it, which I'm hoping some of you would like to take action on. We received news that in the fiscal year 22 City Council preliminary budget response, they call for $2.2 million to be allocated to fund 28 of the schoolyards to playground sites to be open to the public. And that includes PS 184, PS 2M, which is getting constructed in your district very soon, starting work on that very soon, and PS 19 and PS 15. And there are actually 4 playgrounds. I think they're all in Community Board 3 that are affected by this money. And we are trying to encourage a big push of letters to the mayor and the new chancellor to urge them not to cut that priority. The city council is saying this is a priority for us. We want you to put this into the budget. It's a pretty small ask in terms of the whole size of the budget. It's also, there's so many reasons to do it, you know, as you all know, because of what's going to happen in the east side, you know, the park, Lower East Side Park. And I have a letter that I shared with Trevor that I'm not sure what the best way is to share with everybody, but I don't know if it's best to just, I have it on my screen. I sent it to you. You probably want to send it out, but it's a letter to the mayor and the DOE chancellor urging them to adopt that recommendation of the city council. So that's the most positive news we've had on this in years. And the good thing is that this is budget season right now. And so we would like those letters to be sent. We're talking to all the schools that are affected and their communities are doing letter writing campaigns using this form this letter that we've created. And we need those to get out by April 29th or so that the mayor has a chance to read them before the budget negotiations happen. I don't know if you have questions for me or need more information, or I can give you more background. I'm just just launching right into, you know, an update on that. But
no, you essentially covered the gut of the problem. This isn't the first month we've tried to discuss this. I mean, it's been frustrating trying to get the mayor's office of resiliency and to talk about it, since that's where the funding came from. So being in a neighborhood where we're talking about resiliency and the funds are being directed there, and then the playground never being open is a bit frustrating. So It's good to hear that. I didn't get a chance to read the letter because I think I got it like 6 o'clock.
Yeah, just sent it to you, sorry.
So I was prepping for that. We do have a resolution prepped, which may have to be adjusted because that is pretty good news, but we still need some advocacy. But before we get to that resolution, I'd like to know if the principal for PS 184 is also on.
Do you know the principal's name, Trevor? I can look and see.
Kavanaugh, Mr. Kavanaugh, I think. Is that right?
It's Jeremy Kavanaugh, principal.
Kavanaugh, yeah, thank you.
There's nobody on, at least.
Okay, so he's not here.
I'm happy to reach out to him also, send him the letter. But
yeah, I think you should send him the letter. I think I'm going to send it to our our office first, as we do typically with type of letters. I think some of the language is incorporated in the resolution, but obviously I haven't taken a look at the letter to see if we can incorporate more, because a lot of the things we do are via resolution. But it's the news that came is promising. Yeah, it's promising, but I think we probably need to incorporate that in our resolution somewhere.
Yeah, just the sentence about advocating that the recommendation be adopted, so I can even put the paragraph in the chat if you want to look at it right now. I'm happy.
That would be helpful.
Yeah, let me do it.
And
I have it up.
Brian, if you could take that language, I'm going to find out therefore or whereas to sort of combine it within the reso.
So I just put it in there.
Trevor, do you want me to bring the resolution up? And we also have a hand up.
Yeah, I'm going to, before we bring the resolution, I'm going to answer a few or have a few questions. And Sam, I see you. I will forward it to that email chain, that letter, or the language for the letter that Joan sent. So I'll go to Val first.
Yeah, just can you put your information in the chat? Thank you. That's it.
Me, Joan?
Joan, yes. Can you put your information in the chat?
You bet.
Thanks.
Are there any other questions from committee members? Sam, I don't know if you wanted to comment or ask a question.
Forgive me, are you me, Sam?
No, you just two Sam, sorry.
Yeah.
No, this is the other Sam. No, I don't have any other questions. I'm on the PTA at the school, so I'd be happy to facilitate, spreading that letter around and also in the community.
That's great, Sam. Do you want to get your email address to me somehow so I can send you the letter?
Yeah, sure.
I just sent your email address, Joan, in the chat to everybody. So Sam, you can grab it.
Okay, I'll email you right now, Joan.
Perfect. Thank you, Sam.
Perfect. Appreciate that. We are efficient this evening.
You just changed.
So, yeah, I know. Be here at 10:30 once again. You want to bring up the resolution that we have drafted?
Yeah, and I just added the paragraph to it that she sent just at the bottom, so it was in there. Hold on one second.
Val, are you physically raising your hand?
Yeah, Michael, I don't see whatever you put in the chat.
I sent it to everyone. Hold on a second. Let me share my screen first, and then I'll do it again.
Okay, because Joan, I don't see your information in there.
It's in there and I see it.
Yeah, I see it also.
And it was just sent to everyone, so.
And Joan, if we're gonna, if you see something that needs to be added, because obviously this was before.
Yep, of course. We just got this news
right.
the end of last week.
So this is the resolution we are proposing. I don't know, Ryan, do you want to read this?
Ryan, I'm happy to read it if you prefer.
I don't mind reading it. The copy that I'm
Can you
working
make it
on-
bigger? I can't see it on my screen.
Great. You ready?
Sure.
Titled Public Access to the PS 184 Trust for Public Land Playground. Whereas federal and national disaster resilience funds were awarded to New York City, with a significant component going towards the Brooklyn Bridge Montgomery Coastal Resiliency BMCR project, which were intended to protect and provide benefits to the vulnerable coastal Two Bridges neighborhood, including the construction of resilient green playgrounds in the project area. And whereas the playground at PS 184 was designated as one of the sites for green playground construction funded by this award, with design and project completion done in partnership with the Trust for Public Land. And whereas when the PS 184 park was opened, the city's press release stated that in addition to serving students, all playgrounds in New York City are open to the public on weekends, after school, and during school breaks. Okay. And whereas since the PS 184 Trust for Public Land Playground's grand opening, it has remained locked and inaccessible to the public when not in use by PS 184. And whereas the principal of PS 184 has expressed support for expanded public access, but has shared concerns with the community board about garbage that regularly accumulates in the area and the need for the playground to be better maintained for the benefit of the school and the community at large, were public hours to be expanded. Therefore, be it resolved, Community Board 3 strongly supports the playground at PS 184 being open to the public with expanded hours so that it can be used as a resilient community resource as was promised. And therefore, be it further resolved, Community Board 3 calls for the full funding of any budget items that are needed to expand hours at PS 184 and ensure successful playground operations.
The bottom is what the paragraph that Joan just put in the chat.
Right. And one quick thing I want to add, and this is from the principal, if you go up, Ryan, to, it's a very small ad. He about garbage, and even though it may be considered the same, but there is a different element of disease and germs. It would go after whereas the principal of PS 184 has expressed support for expanded public access, but has shared concerns with the community board about garbage. And I would just add pet waste.
Pet lice?
Pet waste.
Sorry. Pet waste. Okay.
Pet waste.
Uh-huh.
And pet waste, or just comma pet waste?
And
I have a hand up.
Sure, I see you. Go ahead, Joan.
So
You're
I would
muted.
say,
Go ahead.
after the playground, after the paragraph that talks about garbage and pet waste, the reason that it is not open is because the city is not funding custodial maintenance of these sites. So that's, whereas, you know, until now, the city has not funded custodial maintenance of the playground. And that's what the city council now is calling for. So that's the piece that's missing in this.
Understood.
Yeah.
Ryan, were you able to pick that up?
no, I'm sorry, I'm working with it. I think there were 2 versions of this document sent around. I'm working with one that has a lot of edits.
Yeah, that one, if you accept the changes, then
be okay.
it gets cleaner.
Okay, because I just got a new message that says can't sync your changes.
Okay, so let's do this wherever you're at, because we can work with this clean document. I just wanted to add John's comment. So it'd be a new whereas, comma, and John, if you could repeat what you just said.
The city has not funded custodial maintenance at the playground at PS 184 that would allow it to open and be cleaned, or whatever you want to say, would allow it to be open to the community and cared for. However you want to say it. And then you could say the paragraph that whereas the city council in the.
Hold on one second.
Sorry.
I just want to make sure it gets up.
Yeah. I would say.
I'm sorry, Michael, you're doing a really good job. Unfortunately, I'm having technical difficulty. I think I just need to get a newer version of this because I'm not even able to edit it. So Michael, can you just cover for right now and I'll try and set myself up. Thank you.
Sorry, go ahead. Joan, you were going to say something else?
Yeah, I was just going to finishing that paragraph that Ryan was working on, that would allow it to be open to the community after school, on weekends, and during the summer, I would say, just because it's not open at night. So we want to, it's really open. You could even be specific and say from 8 a.m. to dusk, because that's the rule of these playgrounds if you want to. I guess that would go after the word community, maybe.
Yeah.
It's fine.
Should we
I think we're okay there because we'd have to change it. Well, okay. Yeah, I see what you're doing. And the last paragraph, if you could scroll up. I'm sorry, scroll down to the bottom. With the new, we need to figure this language right here.
Why don't I put it on all on one page so it doesn't split? There you go.
So I think if someone can help turn this into a therefore, Joan, you can go ahead and speak.
You could just say, whereas the city council's preliminary budget response for fiscal year 22 calls for the investment of $2.2 million to open 28 Trust for Public Land schoolyards. It's all written out there on weekends and on holidays, including PS 184. And preliminary budget response is like a document, you could capitalize it. And that could be it, including PS 184, right? Perfect.
So this highlighted stuff goes away?
Yeah.
Yes, sorry, I was muted, yes. And you could just get rid of the I write to you today, right?
And Joan, you mentioned that because we send this typically to city agencies, but the mayor's office, and that's the target for this particular resolution.
It should be both the mayor's office, the DOE chancellor, and the parks deputy chancellor, Liam Kavanaugh, because actually we believe that this budget item has historically been part of the parks budget, because in its original format under Bloomberg, Plan YC was a partnership with Parks Department, not the DOE, because they were more difficult to work with. So all the custodial funding, I believe, is funneled through the Parks Department.
I'll make sure that's noted in the resolution addressees. Committee members, any other questions? Are there any questions from community members? Okay, so if there's a motion to support this resolution.
I'll make the motion to support this resolution.
Second.
Okay, you want to do a roll call vote, Brian?
Yes, I'm ready. Sorry. Trevor Holland,
Yes.
Kay Webster,
Yes.
Brian Gillum, yes. David Adams,
Yes.
Yaron Altman, Carlin Chan,
Yes.
Valentina Jones,
Yes.
Michael Marino,
Yes.
Robin Chattel,
Robin?
Yes. Yes.
Josephine Velez,
Yes.
Troy Velez. Okay, we're good.
Appreciate it, and thank you, Joan. I think this has been extremely productive, and we also managed to get a letter or a format of a letter we can also send the community members to help with this push. So we appreciate your time.
Thank you so much for just jumping right in and making those changes to your resolution. We'll just keep our fingers crossed.
Thank you. Next up is the update from DDC regarding East Side Coastal Resiliency. Desiree, are you going to lead this? Sure.
Yes, I am. Let me share my screen. Let me share the correct screen. Wait. Hold on 1 second. Okay, are you seeing the full presentation?
Yes.
Okay, great. Fantastic. All right, great. So good evening, everyone. Thank you again for having us. My name is Desiree Gazzo from HNTB Lero, the PMCM team for the Eastside Coastal Resiliency Project. Today, I'm joined by colleagues from New York City DDC, Parks and DOT to present to you tonight. We have a fairly short update. And then please know that we also do present at the CAG meetings and CB6 meetings. So let's just get started. The highlights for tonight's meeting is we will give an overview of contracts. We have a short Section 3 MWBE update, and then we have a what we've heard update. So again, just our typical project areas, which we show at all the meetings. And then jumping into an overview of contracts, I'm going to actually pass the mic to Jeff Marlies from DDC.
Sure. Hi, everyone. Happy April. Just a quick update, which it states right there. What we're expecting right now is construction to start over the summer. We've also shared with Parks to extend their field permits till June 30th. So that's where we currently stand. It's really just based on the complexity of the procurement. And we can answer any questions as they come, if there are any other specifics.
And then for project area 2, construction, as we all know, has started with the first phase of the project. We have Astor Levy Playground in the area around Stuyvesant Cove Park, Solar One, under construction, which we'll talk about in the next slide. And then for parallel conveyance, the bid advertisement is scheduled to be released in the coming weeks. Moving on to anticipated activities. Much of the staging has been completed. The air and noise monitoring equipment installation is well underway. In progress, we have the night work on the FDR Drive West service road. There's the ongoing traffic detour and utility work at East 23rd Street and the East Service Road under the FDR Drive, which any of you who drive through there know that is ongoing work. We do caution everybody as they go through that intersection and to pay attention to all the signage and the flaggers and traffic enforcements that are there. We do realize a lot of folks run and walk over there. So please just, be careful and pay attention. The daytime pile driving in the Solar One has begun. It's actually the sheet pile installations that is ongoing right now. If you haven't had an opportunity to go over and look, you should. There's a decent sized rig that's installing the sheet piles, and it's a vibration method that they're using. It's quite interesting. We were out there the other day. So that will continue for a bit. And then they'll be moving to do the same type of pile installation at Astor Levy Playground starting next week. There will be ongoing traffic shifts at that East 23rd intersection. As the work moves from the north to the south side, it will be kind of going back and forth, and we'll be providing advisories as those shifts occur. And then there is ongoing relocation, utility relocation kind of throughout that project area. Here's a bit of a look ahead. Again, that I know this is pretty small, but again, we post the presentations to the website. It'll be up by tomorrow. But this just shows the different locations. Again, this is where the pile driving is. And, as the wall, that path of the wall, which I think we had on the other, in another presentation, kind of comes through Astor Levy, comes under the FDR, and then runs along Sty Cove Park. And again, it's, this has the kind of progressive work, test pits, utility relocation. Then we have the pile installation. And then once the piles are installed, we'll move on to the flood wall foundation. Again, this is the daytime pile driving. And again, the noise or kind of vibration is anticipated between the hours of 7 a.m. to 3:30 p.m. The noise monitoring is in place. Again, this month we'll be releasing the first quarterly report. And then we're also planning on presenting a more thorough presentation to the CAG next month, which will focus on kind of environmental monitoring. So we're preparing for that now. That's May 6th, if anybody wants to join. And then we could certainly follow up next month if necessary here with any other questions you have, you know, since that report will be out. So there may be follow-up questions, we understand that. And we also received a letter from the CAG on environmental monitoring. So we are responding to that with a formal response, and then as well as presenting to the CAG May 6th. So for workforce outreach events, we are happy to have a soft announcement of our first kind of quarterly ESCR Section 3 and MWBE information session, which will happen on April 29th. That's kind of a save the date. We're kind of finalizing the details. So there is definitely more information to come. And Trevor, you know, as soon as we get the invite, we will send it to you to distribute to the rest of the community board. We'll also have it up on the website, etc. So we're just finalizing a couple of details, and then we hope to push that formal invite out through the HNTB Partners webinar series, which we as HNTB has been hosting since last year. They will be featuring Wayne Lambert, who is the DDC Office of Diversity and Industry Relations, at one of their next HNTB Partner webinar series. So again, when we get that date, we'll have more information there. And then again, you know, we're working with our subconsultant, Trang Bowie from Bowie Studios on other events that we can hold and the partners and programs that we have, you know, stated in previous presentations. So this is the last of what we've heard slide. I'm going to pass it back to Jeff, who has an update on the value engineering.
Sure. I know there's been a lot of discussion about this study, but for those that aren't aware, there was a further version with less redactions posted on the ESCR website last week. The remaining redactions.
Sorry to pause you. Your voice, I don't know if it's me, but your voice is a bit more.
Let me turn off my video. I'll do that. Is that better?
It's actually worse.
Let me try.
How about now? I put in my headphones.
That's 1000% better.
Much better. You sounded like a zombie.
I had some dental work yesterday, so that's part of my lip is numb, so maybe that's contributing as well. So sorry about that. not a good week. What I was saying is I think we talked about the value engineering report study many times, but there was a new version posted. The main redactions remaining are concerns that Con Edison had about their high voltage power lines that run parallel to the FDR, which we've also discussed at this community meeting. So again, if there are any questions about that, we can take them after we're finished.
Thank you, Jeff. And then I believe Negluku is on to talk about the flyover bridge. There was a request to provide an update on the flyover bridge. So we asked the DOT to be here tonight with us to present that.
Yep, thanks, Desiree. This is Negluku DOT. There's not really any update on the flyover bridge. It's still under design, still trying to align with that portion of Project Area 1 construction with ESCR. So as we get more information, we will come back and provide more details.
Thanks, Neg. And then we had asked DSNY and Parks to be here tonight to speak to the compost area in general. DSNY was planning on being here, and they couldn't make it at the last minute. The update that was provided at the last CAG meeting was essentially that they had proposed several locations that the city is reviewing. So that is the most that we can say right now. We would be happy to take any additional questions back to DSNY. Parks Department is here, as you heard from Sam earlier. So Sam, I'm going to pass the mic to you if you want to provide any further updates on that.
Sorry, if you pass the mic to me, I gotta not be on mute. So I believe we were asked to provide the update on compost that Melissa gave at the CAG meeting. Is that right?
Correct.
Yeah, so I will give that update and happy to answer any questions to the best of my ability. So what Melissa said was that the compost facility reconstruction is not part of the East Side Coastal Resiliency Project scope. Now, the previous designs for the reconstruction of the compost yard, which included wetland elements, was developed in 2017 prior to the completion of the ESCR design. As you know, as part of ESCR, the footprint of the existing compost area will be elevated to approximately 8 feet above the existing grade. The decision to elevate this area was made in consultation with the Lower East Side Ecology Center, who expressed a desire to have the compost area elevated and protected, as well after the flood protection after the flood protection alignment of East River Park was adjusted in 2018 to elevate the park. At the new elevation, the prior project would require redesign to accommodate the new elevations. So further consideration of this would be subject to further good faith negotiations with LESIC and require funding for design and construction. And then the future of compost in New York City, across everywhere, needs to be coordinated with our partners in sanitation. So that's not something for Parks to determine. That's up to sanitation.
Thank you, Sam. And I know, Trevor, there were a couple of other requests on updates from Parks, and I believe they will be coming back in a month or so to provide additional updates on some of the other items that were requested. I think they'll have a standalone presentation.
Correct. We did get that notification for more updates for Parks for next month. As we said before, we're trying to spread out the amount of time we spend on this. So next month, I know there's going to be some questions that are outside of what is you posted, but right now we're going to focus on, because this is a lot, but just these 3 items, focus on these items and hold off on the others till next month.
Okay, so that is the end of our presentation for this evening, and we are happy to take any questions.
Sure, I appreciate it. And as Michael had mentioned in the beginning of the meeting, we will go with committee members first. Since I have a couple of questions, I'm going to just ask them these are general questions. This is for DOT, and I just want to confirm that flyover bridge is funded. You mentioned it's in design, so it is funded, correct?
What?
Nag, are you still on? If you're talking,
No, I'm sorry, I didn't quite understand the question. Can you repeat that again?
The flyover bridge, you mentioned that it was in design. I'm just confirming that it is funded.
Yeah, the flyover bridge was funded in the beginning of the design process. Yes.
Right. I'm just confused. Those are the questions we're getting because we haven't talked about that since in at least a year, just to make sure that it is funded. And the pile driving and the vibration type of sheet installation, is this similar to what's going to happen in PA1?
I believe the same, and I know we have a couple of people who might know a little bit more, but I believe the same piles that are happening in PA2 are the same types of piles that are happening in PA1. And there are actually several different types of piling. There's the vibration piling for the sheet piling. Then there's the micro piling, which is more of an augering pile. And then there are the H piles, which are the ones that are actually vibrated in for a partial amount of the way. And then they are kind of pounded in, which is the louder version of the pile driving. So there are actually 3 different types of piles. It is my understanding that the PA2, the majority are the sheet piles and the micro piles, which again are on the quieter side of pile driving. And then there are some though that will have the H piles. And I believe the PA1 has the same 3 versions of piles. If anyone wants to correct me, then please do from our team.
Go ahead.
This is from DDC. So Desiree pretty much got it all covered. PA1 will follow the same procedure, and she's right that the majority is sheet pile, then comes the H pile, and some portion will be micro pile. So same thing, whatever we're doing in PA2 will be similar in the PA1 as well. In terms
Thank
of
you. I'm asking just as a community question, so we know what to expect, and perhaps in 2 months, if you have some lessons learned or some community feedback about that process, it'd be helpful for us, since we think that's going to be the most one of the more noisier aspects of this project. I know it's a different configuration, but I think we'd like to sort of be prepared for what's next.
So Trevor, just to add to your point, we have a regular conversation with the 2 developments that are immediately adjacent to the work in PA2, Stuyvesant Town, Peter Cooper Village, and Waterside Plaza. And although the pile driving has been ongoing for a week or so now, we actually just had a conversation with them today, and so far they have not heard any complaints from their tenants. So knock on wood, so far so good. I mean, there is obviously more to come, but that's the initial feedback that we're receiving, and that's actually closer, at least the majority of the pile driving for PA1 is further away from the community than the current work happening in PA2. So
thank you.
Hopefully that will continue.
And again, we do, anyone who wants to come see the pile driving activities, please come up and see them. If you want to reach out, Nadine is our CCL in PA2, but the pile driving is ongoing. You reach out through our inquiry system to see the operations and experience that and how it, is with the FDR drive and around the community. So
I actually was up there earlier today, and the main issue did not seem to be the pile driving. It seemed to be the traffic. So I hope we take that into account for that area where South Street meets Montgomery and heads to the FDR, because that's going to be a challenge. So just to be aware of that. I'm sure you already are, but that was what I really noticed at the 23rd Street intersection. All right, committee members, I see that Val has raised her hand. Go ahead, Val.
Yes, can you go back to slide 4? Right, okay, so the pre-award process for the apparent low bidder continues. What does that exactly mean? Because one of the things that I've been getting, let me try to remember exactly how they put this, was that the bids were all over or high. Can you just talk about the bids? And because I can't remember exactly what I've gotten, but if I got the email, believe me, everybody got the email. Senior citizen here, not comfortable with the digital world. But there's been quite a few emails about the bidding process and that it's over and that none of the bids came in under and that there was only 3 bids, something like that. So can you just talk about the bids here? Thank you.
Sure. So for every project that we do, that we manage, DDC, we have what's called an engineer's estimate. which is, you know, as it sounds, an engineer looks at all the elements of a particular project and they make their best guess assessment as to what the construction industry will respond with. As is the case with some projects, the bids do come back higher than the engineer's estimate. That is not necessarily uncommon with construction. It depends on market forces. It depends on, you know, obviously the pandemic has had different effects on our construction bids. But just to be clear, and I know Trevor has asked this every meeting, the city is fully committed to funding this project. So the bids did come back slightly higher than the engineer's estimate, but the city is still moving forward full steam ahead.
So in terms of bids, were there just 3? And the other thing with the bids that I think concerns people is the fact that, you know, it's the fact that, okay, did you get, you know, where are we in that process and how does it impact the timeline? Because some of the money has deadlines to it. And
Sure.
so one of the other things is, are we on time? Are we on schedule? Yeah, that's an issue because of the deadlines for the money. And then I have another question, but answer that. That seems to be a big one for people.
Sure. So just to be clear, there were 2 bids that we received. And there was a whole host of outreach to the community, the construction community, but that is what we received. In terms of the timeline, we remain committed to the goals we've stated publicly. And I think I've stated this at previous meetings, but once the contractor is fully on board, we will, you know, have a better sense of schedule and obviously remaining committed to the phasing plan that we've also discussed at this committee.
Okay, so when is the timeline? When are you supposed to determine the contractor? You have 2 bids. When are you supposed to determine the contractor so that the work can get started? You said, I think you said the summer of 2021.
Correct. That is what we're predicting. Is that the summer of 2021 we'll have a contractor on board.
So you don't need to pick them until when? This is April.
Well, we're actually going through the process right now. It's unfortunately a long process, but the procurement process is active and ongoing.
Okay. All right. So the next thing is, I think the next 2 slides away, April 29th. 2 slides away, you gave a date. Next one. I'm sorry, next. I didn't write down the number. This one.
Oh, yeah.
April 29th. It would be good if you reached out. Like you said, you've been in conversation in terms of Area 2. You've been in conversation with Stuyvesant Town and Peter Cooper Village, which is really, really great. I used to work with a lot of people there. But I think it's also important that in terms of this outreach, if residents need to be involved, that you get in touch with Baruch, Lillian Wall, Jacob Reese, because they're all on the waterfront. So I would hope that you do that you reach out to the leaders of Baruch, Lillian Wall, and Jacob Reese. Okay, and just, I guess the other thing to just comment on that you said in terms of what the redactions is I just think it's very important, not that it needs to be not redacted, but just important to, I didn't even hear the words before, high voltage, next to the FDR of these Con Ed wires, because there are various comments going around about going back to that particular plan where it was next to these wires. And I have to say, senior citizen here have no desire to have to walk up some stairs or take a pail to get me some water. So anyway, thank you. That's my questions.
Desiree, I mean, so the April 29th date was just set this week, but if you know, we certainly do want to make sure it's well attended. So if needed, and we're not doing a good job of outreach, we can certainly push that back. This is, you know, this is for the community. So there's no reason why we can't change the date if we're not doing the proper outreach. So we'll circle.
Oh, no,
we'll circle back on that.
I wasn't asking to change the date. I was just asking. Oh, that.
I understand what you're saying. I understand. We just want to.
New York City Housing Authority, low income, people of color, and they need to be respected.
Oh yeah, absolutely. So Desiree and I will take it back to the team. And again, we want to make sure the right people are, excuse me, well informed. So if we have
Just
not done that outreach,
Yeah.
we'll
Hi, This is Trang Dewey. Yes, definitely all of those properties are on our list, and we will also let all of our partners that we've been presenting to, and that includes the community advisory group, the elected officials, and also all of the Lower East Side Employment Network partners. And
I'm
anyone
talking
else who
about
would
the
like to
residents.
discuss.
Wait a minute. I'm talking about the
Hold on.
residents.
Let me get some clarification. No, Val, I know, but let me get some clarification first, because I think Jeff or Trang or someone can you explain what this is for? Because I think there's some confusion about this particular information session.
Sure. It's a general information on the project itself, and then an overview of the MWBE opportunities for firms, for MWBEs and Section 3 firms, and then also kind of a tutorial on how to apply for job opportunities on the ESCR program, and how to register with all of our partners, and that includes Nitro Reese and the Workforce One. So we've been doing a lot of reference to the ESCR website to look at the resources, but this time we're going to be drilling down to the specifics so that any individual interested in registering, if they haven't already, will actually get a full walkthrough of how to do that.
And your function and the importance of this is to make sure that companies that are registered, that are MWBE, are able to get information so they can be a part of this project.
Yes, so that they're aware, and then they learn where to look for procurement opportunities related to this project, and also if they had any questions on how to do business with the entities involved.
But you also said individuals, that you're going to walk individuals. So I think that it's very important that the residents of Baruch, Lillian Wall, and Jacob Reese, low-income housing, mainly African Americans, Latinos, people of color, Asian Americans, that they be informed so that they can be walked through the process. That's all I'm saying, is that they need to be respected. Low-income folks in NYCHA need to be respected. Thank you.
No, I appreciate that, and they're definitely on our list.
And we plan to do this frequently. So this is the first of what we're starting as a quarterly information session. And, just as a reminder, these information sessions, which some of them will contain the same information and just be repeated throughout the project, so that people who potentially couldn't make one session would be able to make another one. We want to try and vary the times of day, so that way maybe different people will be available. So this is just the first of many that we will be holding. I just want to
Thank you.
That sounds excellent. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm going to go to Ryan.
Sorry. Hi. I just wanted to check in about the amphitheater, because we haven't heard about that element of the design for a very long time, and there was still a lot of the design that was still being put together. So I would just like to request that that be something we get an update on. If you can't provide one tonight, I totally understand, but would like to know where that's going.
Thanks, Ryan. And that was one of the items that we were hoping to present with Parks. So we will need to come back. That was another item from the last CAG meeting that we are just following up on where we are with that. And then we will come back. We weren't prepared with the final response tonight. So we'll either send a written response, or at the next CAG or CB meeting, providing a response in the presentation. But that is on our list of items to follow up on.
Thank you, and appreciate it. And Desiree, I know you keep mentioning the CAG and the CB3, but for that particular item, just want to emphasize that as a CB3.
Yeah.
Primarily because the advisory group, and I'm not sure if that's the name of it, but was formed before the CAG, and there were members, which I'm not sure how active it is, but I think most of them were either on the community board or part of that process. So we need to make sure the update comes here. And I know we had discussed this beforehand, so to bring Parks in here. Any other committee member questions? And Michael, I am seeing no other committee members, and I see one hand from a community member. Do you see any other hands, Michael, if you're on?
No.
Thank you. So I'm not going to use the timer at this time, even though it is 7:37. We have two more lengthy topics that we're going to get into discussion. So let's see if we can answer a few questions. Christine, go ahead. I'm just going to keep a mental timer. I won't cut you off, but you've been to a few meetings, so go ahead.
Yeah, sure, and I appreciate it, and thank you. So I just wanted to go on the record here. I really appreciate Sam giving this update, as Melissa did at our CAG meeting, with the reason why the compost yard is not included in the construction. And what I have to say is that we indeed had a meeting with Parks and DDC on May 16th of 2019, when Jamie Torres Springer floated the idea of elevating the compost yard. He literally asked us, do you want to us to elevate it out of the floodplain, or do you want to leave it at grade? And so I just want to say we did not request this for this to happen. And we would like, but we said, hey, if this works better for your design, by all means, let's elevate it. I think it's a little bit disingenuous to now say, because we made this request, this cannot happen. I also want to remind everybody on in this meeting that the park at Pier 42 is also not elevated. It's staying at grade. And the flood wall that is going to protect us is running along the FDR and actually cuts into East River Park for the first time just before, sort of between where the compost yard is now and the amphitheater. Also looking at the construction drawings of the ESCA project as it stands right now, the lawn that is proposed there is not elevated 8 feet. It is elevated about 4 feet. So it is, Sam, I think, mentioned that he said the park will be elevated 8 feet, but I would just like to draw to the facts that this part of the park is not being elevated to the same extent as the other parts of East River Park. I find it not a great reason to exclude the compost yard. Plus, if we had a meeting about this and were asked whether we like to have it, and then to come back 3 years later to say, oh, it can't happen because you requested that, that is also very questionable. And I will stop there, but I would like to just really put a request out there for really to have a sit down with the Parks Department to discuss this further.
We're going to do this in two ways. So my screen is, see the PDF, but Sam, if you're still on, I'd like you, if you can, to address that and to address her request for a sit down to discuss this.
Sure. So regarding the sit down, you know, as we've said many times before, that we're trying to do this one step at a time, right? So we have prepared as everybody on this call knows, we have prepared the Seward Park Parkhouse for Lessig's programming needs. We did that, you know, many months ago, and we are, sorry about that. We are waiting for Lessig to take residence in Seward Park Parkhouse to begin programming there. Our first step would be to get them in the park house, get them papered, by which I mean, you know, a license or a memorandum of understanding, so that we can have them legally there in that park house. This is job number one for parks, and not just, you know, because we are eager to get Lessig up and programming as promised in Seward Park, but because we have space needs, right? We now have, as was mentioned earlier on this call, have a ton of staffers coming back and a ton of staffers that we're going to hire. We need to keep them separated, right, for COVID safety. this is actually a pretty significant space in the district that is offline now and is lying fallow after we have renovated it for Lessig. We need Lessig to take the space. Once Lessig takes the space, once we get them papered in that space, then, as we have described before, the next step in the process is for us to begin good faith negotiations about Lessig's role in East River Park. Now, part of that conversation has to involve DSNY. And as I said earlier, the future of compost, across any site in New York City has to involve DSNY. We got to defer to our DSNY partners about what that is.
Thanks, Sam.
I'm going to follow up with that. So to the last part of her statement and your first answer about the sit down with Lessig to discuss this, you can facilitate that and give us an update by our next committee meeting, or is it something that might take longer than that?
Well, if Lessig takes residence at Seward Park Parkhouse, which is ready, and we get them papered, then we can begin discussion about their future at East River Park, as we have said many times.
Understood. I'm going to do this. I see 2 committee members, and I'll get back to you, Christine, quickly, but I want to go to the committee members first. So Kay, your hand was raised first. Go ahead.
I'm kind of gathering that, or assuming that given all the difficulties and we'll say miscommunications or lack of communication, redacted reports, change of plans, that I would assume that, and I don't know this, but that the Lower East Side Ecology Center is really assuming that their only leverage has to do with staying where they are, and that asking them to move before there's a commitment. I mean, it gives me pause. So, there's that. I don't see why those two are connected, why this thing can't be mapped first, so that the good faith comes from the Parks Department, where there has been, for good reason, the community, many people in the community are not feeling super trustful, like why that can't be mapped. And then we can have that discussion about moving them into that park house. I mean, nobody feels a whole lot of trust there. Go ahead, Ryan.
I'm going to let Sam comment if he wants, and then I'll go to Ryan.
I take the question in the spirit of which it's given. A lot of this is, in terms of mapping and, again, the future of compost, Parks does not call the shots there, right? We're not the compost agency. That's DSNY. So we got to defer. We can do what we can do as Parks, right? And the first thing that we can do is get our spaces activated. We're focused on that, and we want that to happen in Seward. We have an agreement with Lessig about what we want to happen here at Seward. And, so that's a good place to start, by making good on that agreement.
I do have to follow up. I was at the city council hearing where DSNY was there. I didn't sense in any way from them a reluctance about compost. I sensed it very much from the Parks Department. And Councilmember Reynoso was pretty clear as well. So there's some big missing here and I think Parks Department could be the magnanimous one and map the compost yard. And the fact that DSNY isn't here, every time we're meeting here, we don't have all the players in the room. Today we don't have Con Ed. I don't know how we move forward as the people who are supposed to represent this community when we don't have all the information.
I don't know what to say. There's no answer. So.
No, Kay, and I hear you. And to your point, I mean, it's nice to have Sam on this particular call. I know Melissa couldn't make it, and I know Parks will be here next month to discuss some other items. Oddly enough, we've had sanitation at every other meeting except for this one. It's just, so this is what we're going to do for next month. And I know we discuss the compost yard every single month. We're going to try and get Parks and someone at Sam's level in here with the equivalent of DSNY at the next meeting, just to clear up any issues beyond that. And I hear both sides, but I think if sanitation had been here, we might have been a little different conversation. That being said, I'm gonna go to Ryan because we still have other things on the agenda, but go ahead, Ryan.
I don't know all the background between the relationship from the LES Ecology Center and Parks, but I know it's been difficult because I've been sitting through these meetings for years now, listening to the issues that come up here. And I'm very disappointed to hear that the city is holding meetings and discussions hostage in the process, that you will not discuss with the LES Ecology Center its future based on whether or not they have moved into Seward Park. So I just want to say that to me is not a way to work with community. And this community has shown over and over and over again its deep concern about the LES Ecology Center. They're not alone in this. And so refusing to talk to them about the future feels like refusing to talk to the community as a whole. So I want to express that. I'm really disappointed in that response and in that kind of condition over meeting and trying to work out the differences.
Okay.
Okay, thank you. What we're going to do, obviously, and I mentioned this because we have to continue on the other agenda items. Sam, I appreciate you coming. I know you're stepping in, and I don't think you've been to too many of these meetings, but welcome to CB3. But after some clarification, hopefully next month, we may have to write yet another resolution based on the information that we get. So just for whoever is able to come, they need to be at your level or above to be able to answer the questions. I'm going to go, Christine, I'm going to go to you quickly, and then we're going to move on. I mean quickly, Christine, and I know, but hopefully we will get sanitation next month. So go ahead.
Yeah, sure. And I just, don't want to defend sanitation, but there is just no updates about a place where we could move to. But hopefully maybe next month we will have an update about that. So what Sam is saying, and I'm expressing here how it feels to me, it feels like blackmail, because saying that they are not going to sit down with us and discuss anything until we move is, that's just not fair. We also had a license agreement with Parks that was basically a very substantial partnership that was, and that license agreement and what is offered now when we move to Seward Park is in no shape or form a agreement that lives up to that spirit. It would be a real step down for us to even consider signing something like that. And again, I think it is disingenuous to say, oh, we're only going to talk to you once you move. It's, it's putting basically, a lot of pressure on us, and there is nothing in return. And I would really like to, again, appeal to the Parks Department to be a fair partner that we have been for 20 years. We have a partnership that goes over 2 decades, and to find a way to sit down with us and to discuss the many issues that we have to discuss, including having a license agreement that is equivalent to the one that Parks let expire in December. Thank you.
Yeah, I just, if I could, I would like to say, we definitely value the excellent work that you've done and the community building exercises that you have undertaken over decades in East River Park. I'm serious about that. If we didn't value that, we wouldn't have made space in Seward Park. Now, the agreement at Seward Park, it's got to be different to a certain extent just because it's a different park, right? Our maintenance, you have somewhat of a maintenance and operations agreement in East River Park. It's going to be a different sort of agreement in Seward Park just because the needs of the park are different and your role in the park is going to be different. But we want you there.
All right, thank you. We're going to end that discussion for this month, so we can move on to additional items. Are there any questions from community members? And we're going to keep it brief, and I'll take one or two. Something is wrong with my computer. I don't.
No, you're good to go. There's no questions, Trevor.
Then we are going to move on. Thank you, Desiree and the team, and Sam also. If I didn't mention a member of that team, I'm sorry, but thank you all. It's just that this rarely happens, so I want to move on. So thank you very much for attending. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Trevor. Thank you, everyone.
Thanks, everybody.
That was our birthday present to you, Desiree. Short.
Thank you. Thank you. Have a great night, everyone.
Night.
Thank you. I know that Will Fisher, I don't know if he's on. I know he said he wanted to go late. He probably thought
I'm here, thankfully. It just made it.
Oh, okay. Well, I was trying to stall, but
thank you.
So it is up to you. If you want to do, the BMCR first and then the Pier 42 update. We have draft resolutions for both. So if you want to, it's up to you.
Great. Yeah, let's do BMCR first. For Pier 42, like I mentioned, the relevant park staff isn't able to attend. So I'll answer questions as I'm able, but that'll be a shorter one. We do have, good evening, everybody. Will Fisher here from New York City Economic Development Corporation. Nice to see many familiar faces. Hopefully everybody's getting your vaccines and staying healthy. I'm joined here by a great number of city team members. We've got Jordan here from the mayor's office. We've got folks from Capital Construction, and we've got our partner agencies, Parks, DOT, EDC, and others. So also want to introduce Lauren Messier from AECOM, which is the design firm that we're working with on the Brooklyn Bridge Montgomery Coastal Protection Project. So folks, I just want to give a quick overview before Lauren shares her screen and walks through the presentation that we have tonight. We are very, very close to completing design. We received the final approval from the Public Design Commission just a few weeks ago. And we have a sort of number of processes underway as we transition this project from the design phase, which we're in right now, to the pre-construction and construction phases. So as folks might remember, EDC, the Economic Development Corporation, we are designing the project, and DDC, the Department of Design and Construction, is going to be building the project. So they've been at the table for years now with us, and thank you to them for joining us here tonight. We're going to be undergoing sort of a handoff process over the next few months with them as they really take the reins on this. A couple other things I'll say, just to sort of recap how we got here. We've done 2 large public engagements within the design phase so far. One was mostly focused on the design, or I guess 2 were sort of mostly focused on the design. We're going to have another large public engagement in May, which folks should start to see invites and information about in the next week or 2. That one's largely going to be focused on the maintenance and operations. How is this flood protection device that will protect the Two Bridges neighborhood going to work? And then also sort of agency roles, who does what. There's a lot of folks at the table here. So we want to make sure that after having completed design and working very closely with all of you to incorporate as many of your recommendations and feedback as possible. Also just talking about sort of a preview to what construction of this project will look like, and making sure that everybody understands how it will work. We're building 0.8 miles nearly of deployable flood protection, and that's complicated stuff. So we're really excited to have gotten to this point, and we're really excited to be on the verge of implementing it and want to make sure that everybody is well looped in. So tonight we're going to basically give a overview of the final design product, take any questions and feedback that you all might have. Like I mentioned, we are essentially finished with the design process, so we may not be able to incorporate any large or significant changes at this point, but we want to hear any of that honestly as you have it. Like I said, tonight is mostly focused on sort of the product of the design process. And then next month in May, we'll have a sort of standalone BMCR meeting that you will see posters and flyers and invites for in a few weeks. And that's probably going to be in mid-May. So we'll look forward to seeing you there to talk about the transition to DDC and about how the system will work. So Trevor, any quick things before we get started, or should we jump right in?
Jump right in.
All right, Lauren. And Michael, thank you for giving us all the privileges, screen sharing and such.
Well, that's all Michael, that's not me.
Okay, can everyone see my screen?
Yes, thank you, Lauren.
As Will mentioned, this is mostly going to be a design update and just letting everyone know kind of where we've landed with final design to date. So there'll be a very brief project introduction. I will recap what we're doing with the flood protection alignment and the raised platform for sea level rise flood protection. And then we'll just jump right into the project design. So as most of you know, this is one part of the larger Lower Manhattan Coastal Resiliency Master Plan. The Brooklyn Bridge Montgomery Coastal Resilience, or BMCR as we call it, goes from the Brooklyn Bridge in the south to Montgomery Street in the north, and consists primarily of deployable flood protection measures. When those are deployed, they will protect the neighborhood from flooding due to coastal storms, while also preserving communities' views and access to the waterfront. This project area, one of the complexities and challenges of this project is that we do overlap with the existing East River Esplanade packages 3, shown in pink here, and package 4. Those are both already built and existing on the site, as is Pier 35. And we partially overlap with the Brooklyn Bridge Esplanade project that has been designed and is currently in construction procurement. So we've coordinated extensively with that design team to try to avoid and minimize conflicts between our two project areas as much as possible. So for the flood protection alignment and the raised platform, shown here on this drawing, as you can see in the orange color, these are the flip-up floodgates. So along the public waterfront, the flood protection consists primarily of flip-up floodgates, and that's to preserve and the views and access to the waterfront. As we move further north, the flood protection switches to be primarily flood walls with roller gates and swing gates in between, and that's due to space constraints and limitations in a much narrower footprint. The flip-up gates along the waterfront are also installed on top of an elevated platform. So we're building up the existing grade of the existing esplanade, and that is to provide passive, continuous protection against future tidal inundation due to sea level rise alone. And then in the event of a large coastal storm, the flip-up gates are put into their vertical position and provide the full height of flood protection. So for the project design, I want to recap a lot of the community feedback that we've heard over the last, well, really 4 years since we started the LMCR project in 2016. And we'll talk about the Esplanade program, a couple of new items that we're introducing today, and go through a more detailed view of the flood infrastructure and the Interceptor gate building. So they just mentioned for more than 4 years, the city team, the project team, we've been meeting with this community to talk about the design, the flood protection, to hear about community priorities in terms of what we need to preserve, where the alignment should go, and then also getting feedback on program. How is the waterfront used today? How do we want to use it in the future? What can we do to improve what's already out there today? As we've been hearing all that feedback and working to incorporate it, one thing that we like everyone to keep in mind is that this is a very challenging, highly constrained site. It's part of our built environment. There's a number of existing infrastructure and underground subsurface conditions that we need to work around. These include some large sewer chambers underneath the ground, the existing FDR highway that's elevated. There are columns to work around and subsurface foundations. We need to maintain vehicular access perpendicular to the gates on the dry side of the flood protection, and that's for a backup deployment method for a vehicle to pull in and manually lift these gates. We also need to maintain continuous vehicular access along the waterfront for maintenance vehicles and emergency vehicles to get out there for safety purposes. So there's a lot of stuff that we have to work around to try to fit the flood protection alignment through there. And then also on top of that, build out spaces for community program and amenities. That said, I think there's a lot that we've been able to accomplish based on what we've heard from this community over the last 4 years. So in addition to providing this flood protection system that's going to protect against both sea level rise, low level flooding, and major coastal catastrophic storm events, we are also able to incorporate a number of program elements. So we've got playgrounds and fitness areas with water fountains that are included at both the north and south ends of the project area. We're maintaining a continuous north-south bikeway connection between the BBE project in the south all the way up to the ESCR project in the north. We are including at the community's request a number of open flexible spaces along the waterfront for people to go out and do Tai Chi or group exercises or use those spaces however they see fit. For the fitness areas that we're building out, there will be new universal and seated fitness equipment. We're building out two new fitness areas. Those will replace the 2 fitness areas that we're disturbing. The current design includes 17 pieces of equipment, more than half of which are seated pieces for a lot of the senior residents in the community. Planters that are installed already or proposed as part of the Brooklyn Bridge Esplanade and East River Esplanade will remain on site. We're not disturbing the corridor immediately along the bulkhead where the railing is and that seating and those planters. There are 2 toddler age 2 to 5-year-old playgrounds and 1 older kids 5 to 12-year-old playground that we're adding to the waterfront. For the toddler area in the north, the proposed steel kettle drums that we introduced at our last community meeting and heard some feedback on, those are going to be replaced with quieter play equipment. For wayfinding, we are engraving the names of all the slips onto ramps and HPU columns throughout the site. We're adding more of the really popular Pier 35 glider swings. We're adding more of those along the Esplanade. You'll see some of those locations in the upcoming slides. At the community's request, we're removing fitness or picnic tables from the north fitness area, but then we're also including a performance space and a designated picnic area towards the south near Wagner Place. We heard a desire for those picnic spaces from other community members. There will be skate deterrents integrated into the design. So rather than having skate stops that need to be affixed onto benches that could be removed, we're actually, with the way that we design benches and curbs and the joints between a number of these precast concrete units, we're integrating skate deterrents into the design. So it's just inherently built in. We're including a variety of different seating types for flexible seating arrangements. There will be a climbing structure for older kids and teens that we're adding that's up near Rucker Slip. We have, again, based on recent community feedback that we heard in the fall, we modified the layouts of all the game tables in order to accommodate more seating and accessible seating around those tables. The underutilized bocce courts will be replaced with other program elements. And finally, we're adding lighting at the entry areas at the key intersections, and we're updating all of the existing downlights that are attached to the FDR to new LED fixtures, and that's for improved site-wide safety. With all of that, there are also, of course, a few things that we're not able to accommodate due to site constraints and technical constraints. So there are a few elements that we want to highlight here that we looked into and just can't be accommodated in this design or as part of this project. So as we've discussed previously, the existing basketball half courts in the north, they're going to be impacted by the flood protection alignment. The floodgates are running right through that footprint, and there isn't enough space on either side of the alignment in that current location to replace those courts. So we're going to be relocating and building out a half court basketball area to the south of the project area near Wagner Place. That's because that's the spot where there's enough space on the dry side of the alignment to fit that larger program. Due to the overhead FDR structure, we can't include additional planters. I'm a landscape architect, so believe me, I would love to be filling the space with plants and green stuff. Unfortunately, that just won't get enough light, and it's too shaded, so they won't last. However, again, we're maintaining the existing planters and the new ones that are proposed as part of the BBE along the waterfront where there's a little bit of sunshine that reaches the site. So we're not touching those. Those are going to stay. The existing turf field, unfortunately, is also going to be impacted by the flood protection alignment and removed, where we cannot construct a new one within the flood zone. However, a new turf field was recently installed in Tanahey Playgrounds. I know, again, it's not the same as having it at the waterfront, but hopefully it's not seen as a complete loss. Due to Appendix G requirements and existing site constraints, bathrooms, we have heard time and again from this community, and we totally understand it. The bathrooms at the waterfront is a very much desired facility. Again, Appendix G, for those of you who don't know, it's part of the New York City Building Code, adopted after Hurricane Sandy. There's a lot of requirements for building occupiable spaces in flood hazard zones. And so due to those restrictions and the regulations, it's just not feasible to include bathroom facilities as part of this project. Also, because of space constraints and maintenance considerations, a dog run is not part of this design. This is actually something, again, since we've been meeting with the community over the last number of years, we've actually heard mixed feedback about this. We know that some community members are interested in a dog run, but others weren't. And the clear priorities as far as what program to include there were other things that needed to be prioritized at the waterfront, including those fitness areas and the playgrounds. And so we're not including one of those. Dog runs are also not usually maintained by the Parks Department. There has to be a separate community group kind of set up and designated to maintain that. So that's not something that is part of this project scope and not something that we're currently proposing. And similarly, public artwork, security cameras, bollards, those are also not elements that are included within this flood protection project scope of work. But I will say that the current design doesn't preclude those things potentially being added to the site in the future. So we're not saying it could never happen. It's just not part of this flood protection project today. So as I'm going to walk through the next whole set of slides are things that I think everyone here has seen before. We're going to go through them really quickly. That's not to brush anything off. I'm more than happy at the end. We can go back to a lot of these slides, revisit some of them and talk in more detail about the design. But I do think we want to get to the end and make sure we have enough time for comments and questions. But one major point I want to underscore here is that the overall design and the program elements that you're about to see in the following slides really have not changed. They're substantially identical to what we presented to this committee back in September of 2020, and then again to the larger public at our public webinar in December. We've made some minor updates to some elements of the design. None of the large programs have changed. All the program spaces are the same. We've changed out some design elements, reconfigured a few things. That's been largely in response to community feedback that we received in the fall. And also in some cases, just due to technical requirements, as the design has gotten more detailed and evolved, we've figured a few more things out. So all of those changes I've annotated, we have called out in the slides. So we'll highlight those as we go through, and I'll make sure to mention them. Two of the big ones that you're going to see over and over and over again in almost all the slides. One, as we got into the detailed grading, like all the little elevations and how we're negotiating the grade changes in final design, we realized we could shorten the lengths of the ramps a little bit. So they've gone from longer full-length ramps, and we've shortened those a little bit without making them steeper. So they're still accessible to everyone. We've gotten to take a little bit of that length away, and that's to make it easier and quicker to get from one side of the alignment to the other. Similarly, in some locations on the water side, we flipped the direction of the ramp, and that's to bring the top of the ramp on this side closer to the top of the ramp on the other side. Again, it's just about being able to get people up and over the flood protection quicker. So it's all for accessibility. And the second one that shows up repeatedly is, as I mentioned, we updated the layout of the game tables, and this was in response to feedback we heard in the fall from community members. So previously we had the typical ERWE style game table with a seat on two ends of it, and they were kind of clustered like this. And what we heard is that community members are actually interested in seeing a layout where we could have 4 seats all around the table. So we've got 1, 2, 3, 4. And the precast benches are outlined in red. And then the blue areas, sometimes we leave one of those benches out, and that's for accessible companion seating. So we've got this new layout that has 4 seats around. Sometimes it's benches and sometimes it's companion seating, so people can play on themselves. And this diagram of the overall site programming, this is the same. It has not changed since the fall. So you see we've got a combination of these social spaces at entry areas, active spaces shown in orange with play and fitness and sports prioritized towards the north and south ends, and then some of the passive areas with gliders and other seating elements in the center. Starting in the south, this is across from Wagner Place. We have our basketball court, designated picnic area, and performance space, and we were also able to add a half unit of the glider seating down here. The only significant changes we've made since the fall is that we've, again, reduced the lengths of the ramps a little bit. So that's the same. The rendering standing on top of the flood protection, looking at the basketball court. Smith House is behind us. Performance space looking out towards the waterfront. The playground, this is a ramp accessible play unit for the 5 to 12-year-old age range, and a smaller sensory play environment for the 2 to 5 toddler age range. We have not made substantial changes to the playground area since the fall. Actually, we haven't changed anything to the playground. One big change has been in the south fitness area. Previously, this little piece here wasn't on this water side. The design came over and then the platform bumped out over here. And we had a fitness cluster of equipment over here. But we've been working with DEP and they need access at grade. So not on top of a platform, but on the existing ground. They need access to be able to pull a vehicle and drive on top of an underground sewer chamber that's here. So we modified the design, we pulled it out this way a little bit, and we were actually able to incorporate 3 additional pieces of fitness equipment. So it's a different layout, but we're actually making it more robust. There's more opportunities for fitness equipment in this updated design. So that was the reason for that change. Layers stay the same. This is an example of the updated. We also updated the type of fitness equipment. Again, in response to community feedback, we're making sure that in all fitness areas, we are including a few seated pieces so that it's accessible to everyone. So those seated pieces are new. At Catherine Slip, we have our first social pocket, again, clustered seating with the updated game table layout, and we shortened the lengths of the ramps a little bit on the water side and dry side. Otherwise, the design has remained the same. We have not changed it since December. This is a view of Catherine Slip during your typical sunny day, and then in a storm condition, the gates that are back here on top of the platform, they will flip into their, oops, not the wrong way, into their vertical position to create that continuous line of protection. Moving further north from Catherine Slip, this is our first, what we call our passive pocket with some seating and our 2 glider units. This design also has not changed or been updated other than we were able to shorten the lengths of the ramps a little bit. Water side. This is across from, this is at Market Slip. Again, we shortened the lengths of the ramps, we revised the layout of the game tables, and another minor change that we made here is that this L-shaped wall where we have flood wall across here, again, because there's an underground sewer chamber, we can't build the flip-up gates on top of it. We jump that gap with a roller gate that sits against the flood wall here most of the time, and then during a storm, we'll slide across that sewer chamber and seal against this flood wall. This used to be, we had previously proposed a metal, like louvered fence or sort of a screen coming across this L shape. And in working with DOT and some of the other agencies, we've actually updated this design for security purposes to be a continuous flood wall, but it will have a similar, we call it a straight reveal. So some form liner work in it and architectural detail that will make it match the flood wall, the architectural flood walls on the rest of the project area. So it'll really blend seamlessly with the rest of the design. A little further north of Market Slip between Market and Pike, again, we have our glider seating in the center here, and we've reduced the lengths of the ramps slightly to make them more accessible. And this is a view of those gliders looking out towards the waterfront. Design has not changed. Pike Slip, again, the design is pretty much the same other than we've reduced the lengths of the ramps and we've updated that game table layout as requested. This is a view from the dry side, crossing the street, looking down on the waterfront. And a little further beyond Pike Slip, north of Pike Slip, we have our first active space towards the north, and this includes the 2 to 5-year-old play space. Again, we replaced the steel pedal drums with quieter pieces. We'll see those in the next rendering. This is that climbing structure and ping pong tables in between, and we were able to, again, shorten the lengths of the ramps a little bit. This is a view looking at the toddler play area. We replaced the steel kettle drums with a hardy plastic version with a polyurethane skin, and we expect these will be quieter musical instruments. And with the overhead FDR, that buffers sound a little bit, as does the sort of constant traffic noise that probably falls into the background for most of us and becomes white noise. But all of that should be a sound buffer enough that we do not expect or anticipate that any noise from the playground will make its way into the neighborhood. Maybe some laughing kids, but I don't even think that would. And this is the same view that we had before of the climbing structure north. So you see the playground in the back, some ping pong tables, and then the climbing wall structure. Tucker slip, again, the design has not been changed since the fall, except that we have managed to reduce the lengths of the ramps, get people up and over, and access to the waterfront a little bit quicker than before. This is a view standing on top of the flip-up gates, looking south. And finally, our north fitness area. Again, we've reduced the lengths of the ramps and sounding like a broken record a little bit. And we also here, again, we updated the fitness equipment to include some additional seated pieces as requested. And this is the updated selection of fitness equipment that we've been working with to make sure it's all accessible. And we do have these seated pieces. A couple of additional updates here with the engraved signage. This is what we showed previously and what we've seen in a number of the renderings. We had previously proposed that on both the dry side and the water side of the protection, on our ramps, we would engrave the names of the slips. That is staying the same on the dry side. However, on the water side, again, as we got into the more detailed technical grading of the site and working with the detailed elevations, we discovered that actually the ramps on the water side are going to be a little bit shallower. The existing elevations are higher, the ramps don't have to go up as tall. And so instead of having them really low to the ground, we brought that engraved slip names up a little bit higher. We're going to feature them on the water side of the HPU columns. I think that's easier for people to see. It'll be brighter and it's a nice feature. So we're just shifting the location of that signage. Bring it taller. And this engraved signage will happen at the intersections and the entry areas, but the other elevation or the other HPUs in between will still feature the flood elevation markers as previously proposed. So we're getting both. And finally, lighting. What we're doing, as I mentioned in the very beginning of this presentation, this is some snapshots of existing conditions at all of the intersections and the existing lighting conditions taken at night. What we're going to do is brighten up those spaces a little bit. We're adding these linear wall washers. So these are lights, they won't be pointing directly down, they'll be reflecting up off of the FDR. So they might even have a nice little lilac glow. And that's to add some increased brightness at night at these intersections. And again, we are maintaining the existing down lights that are attached to the bottom of the FDR. But in the East River Esplanade project area, we're going to change these out and update them to new LED fixtures. And that's matching what is going to go in new as part of the Brooklyn Bridge Esplanade project. So overall, it's going to be a lower maintenance, longer lasting lighting system with additional brightness at the intersections. Heading into the walkthrough of the flood infrastructure, I'm going to go through these really quickly because these slides really have not changed since the last time we all looked at them. But again, you'll see in pink, these are our HPU columns with the flip up floodgates in between. And then we do have stretches of passive flood wall with roller gates and swing gates at the north and south ends of the project area. Which we're calling out the roller gates and the swing gates. We have, of course, the labeling that you've seen previously for ESCR. We're bringing that back. We're continuing that as part of the BMCR project. That's on the floodgates. We have a passive wall stretch. This is starting at the Brooklyn Bridge end, coming down the Brooklyn Bridge off ramp. This is a view of the HPU columns with the flood elevation markers. This is that updated area at Market Slip with the roller gate on the water side. And we've changed this louvered metal fence or screen to a stretch of the passive concrete flood wall that will match the flood wall elsewhere in the project area and really blend with the design. This is an elevation view, like a front view at Pier 36, looking towards the waterfront or towards the buildings behind Pier 36. So we have longer stretches of the flood wall here with that architectural detail that's matching what's happening in ESCR with openings that we're maintaining for those existing driveways. We're also building out as part of the flood infrastructure for Pier 36. We're improving the pedestrian condition here. So we're creating a wider sidewalk that's really distinct from the bike lane area, safer pedestrian condition. We're pulling the flood wall back a little bit towards the Pier 36 driveways. That's to improve sight lines for vehicles going in and out, again, to improve pedestrian safety in this area. And also adding these large boulders and stones, flanking the vehicular entrances, again, just for pedestrian safety to make sure if anyone's hanging out back here where they shouldn't be and not on the sidewalk, they're not going to get hit by a vehicle coming in and out of those driveways. There's a rendering view looking across and seeing one of those driveway spaces. Crossing South Street up near Montgomery Street. Finally, the Interceptor gate building. I think everyone has seen these slides before. So again, as we're putting in, this is down near, this is Wagner Place, right? This is the DOT yard towards the south. And we are building in the new Interceptor floodgate adjacent to the DOT yard. As part of putting that in, again, we heard community feedback about wanting a safer pedestrian experience here. So we're pushing out the sidewalk, we're creating a wider walking space here, and also adding a crosswalk, a designated crosswalk between the sidewalk and the Green Street on the other side. And this is a rendered aerial view of what the building might look like in the future. So here, and another view. Yeah, so that's the end. I know I went through that really quickly, everyone. Thanks for bearing with us, but we want to make sure we leave adequate time for questions and comments and discussion.
Okay, thank you. I've got quite a few, but I know Michael has one. Go ahead, Michael.
Yeah, so first of all, great presentation. I wish you would give lessons to people on how to present. I really appreciate the clarity and everything. It was a wonderful presentation. I just have some questions, and they'll have to forgive me because we see so many of these presentations and they get jumbled in my head, and I'm dealing with allergy medication right now. So the last time we saw this presentation, I just want to confirm some things. You had mentioned that comfort station bathrooms were not possible because of the underground infrastructure, correct?
They're not possible because of requirements that are part of what's called Appendix G, an appendix to the New York City Building Code. So the area along the waterfront is currently mapped as a flood hazard zone. That might change in the future after this project is built, but for now we have to adhere to those standards as if it's part of the flood zone. And so those require a lot of, I'll explain this simply. The building would either have to be built out massively, like a huge bunker that's basically taking up the entire space of the Esplanade, or be built elevated above the flood levels, which would run it right into the bottom of the FDR. So there's just not, there's not feasible space requirements for us to meet those standards.
Okay. The next one is, again, I might be confusing this with a different presentation, but if I remember correctly, the last time we saw this, there was a lot of community input or questions around the basketball court and the lack of a basketball court in the northern section, and that only the southern section was getting sort of better amenities, kind of. So has that been addressed in this new plan?
So that's one of the things I mentioned at the very beginning as part of, unfortunately, requests that we can't perfectly meet the way that the community would like us to. So let me find the view. So this is not exactly, but close to approximately the location of where the two basketball half courts are presently located. So as you can see, this dark gray band here, this is our flood protection system, the flip up gates, and the lighter gray on either side, that's the foundation and the raised platform for the flip up gates. We don't have space on either side of the flood protection alignment to fit the size of even a small half court basketball. So it's not feasible at all for us to include basketball in this location and include flood protection. It's really an either or, and this is primarily a flood protection project. The only place where we have the space to do that is further south. Let me just get down to it. Near Wagner Place, and you can see that again, the flood protection in this one location is a little bit closer to the bulkhead, and also you can tell here that the Esplanade itself is so much wider in the south than it is in the north. That's just the existing condition, and so it's a compromise. We know, we recognize, we'd love to keep the basketball courts in the north, but this is the only place if we're gonna have basketball on the waterfront.
Sorry. Sorry about that. Like I said, allergies. My final question is, I've never heard that policy or rule before about dog runs requiring a community group to take care of them. Is that something new from Parks, or where does that come from?
Would Parks or EDC like to field this question?
Yes, I'll take it. This is Ricardo. Yeah, we usually don't put in a dog run unless it's specifically asked, and there's a group that's making a very specific request, and that they will agree to be kind of the stewards of the dog run, as you are at the Corlears vote.
Yeah,
Okay.
I inherited that one, but that's a whole other story. Thanks, Ricardo.
I thank you, Michael. Val, before I go to you, because I have quite a list, I'm just going to circle back on the bathrooms issue, because that is the main request. You have a 0.82 mile stretch of water for the Esplanade with playgrounds and basketball courts and water fountains, and absolutely nowhere to go to bathroom except for the properties across the street in their lawns or in the bushes and the plants. And you had mentioned Appendix G as a reason for not putting in the bathroom, but if you remember before when we were talking about the pavilion, you came to the board of the group, Parks came to the committee to ask for a BSA variance. So am I wrong in that there can't be a BSA variance for a bathroom, or am I missing something here? Because we would vote in favor of that BSA variance, which we have talked about on many occasions. So I just want to make sure we're clear and not giving people the wrong information, and that a BSA variance would take care of that. I know down at in Community Board 1, there are 3 pavilions, and you just approved, or Landmarks just approved sort of outdoor restaurant in a flood zone in front of the Tin Building. I think the address is 94 South Street. And I'm not sure exactly how they did that, because there is no elevation of that particular restaurant bar. So can you explain this, please?
Yeah, Trevor, can I ask what the, would you mind going back to the BSA variance that you said was requested, was granted, and what that was about?
When they added Appendix G, and I can't remember the agency, if it was Parks or EDC, came to us to ask for a BSA variance for the pavilion. Because as Lauren mentioned, they would have to raise it a certain height or make it fortified. We approved that variance for the pavilion. As you know, we're missing a lot of things in package 3, package 4, which I will go over a little later after Val asks her question. So we approved that variance. We never heard back from them, but we were told that money got more expensive. And despite the fact that CB1, a slightly wealthier community, would get 3 or 4 pavilions, we would get 0 and no bathrooms, even though we approved that BSA variant. So
yeah, so I think, Trevor, that I'm thinking, I think it was 2016, and the variance was not approved by BSA. As far as I know as well, having worked on Sandy recovery before, specifically on residential structures, I know that it's very, very rare, if not never, that BSA has provided variances for Appendix G, because like Lauren mentioned, I think and the differences in terms of why there are the pavilions in Community Board 1, it is unfortunate, and I acknowledge that there is a difference there in terms of what was built on the Esplanade there, but those were built in advance of that new regulation before Sandy, and it's essentially, I think, in particular when you're mentioning regarding the outdoor restaurant use down there, that's use of an existing building versus asking the Department of Buildings for permission to put a new building in the floodplain. So, unfortunately that changed. Like Lauren said, the sort of design requirements at this point are too burdensome. And you'd essentially be building a bunker. And I think, even if you were able to, because like Lauren said, there's sort of 2 ways to do it. There's a wet flood proofing within the floodplain, or elevating it to a certain, and I believe there's constraints over both of those because of the subgrade infrastructure and the FBR.
Yeah, but you came to us with a wet footprint design for the pavilion, which we approved. We never heard back about the BSA variance.
Yeah, so BSA denied that variance. So despite the support of the community, they did not.
If you could find that, because we never heard back on that, and I didn't realize that open air restaurant was an extension of the Tin Building, which is a little odd because I thought they were going to demolish that. But it's odd that it's an extension. But if that's the case, I'll look up into that further. But before I go,
yeah, and I'll try to find the BSA variance that from 2016 to figure out the documentation on that.
And this will be in our resolution, which we'll put up after the questions, is because there are temporary bathrooms and there is a significant budget here. And if we cannot get a permanent structure, and as Lauren mentioned, we are looking to get out of the floodplain, but we need at least temporary bathrooms, and we can do that this year, to be honest. They're portable, they're on trailers. There's a nice one at Domino Park, which this community could use. But I don't think we can build this if we do not put bathrooms in this area. I think it's an injustice to the community, to be honest, and to find excuses instead of solutions, because I've given a number of solutions, and our Friends of Pier 35 group paid for a porta potty all last summer because there was nowhere for people to go to bathrooms. And so we use our own funding for that bathroom, and that's something that EDC and Park should do on their own instead of us exhausting our budget just to get one porta potty. So I think there are solutions, and there is a budget for that. And it was the #1 priority for this particular area. So I'm going to refocus that and make sure that's included in strong language in the resolution, because that's, I think, especially in an EJA area, an environmental justice area, not to have a bathroom for low-income folks is tantamount to a grave injustice. But I'll let Val go before I go completely off. Val, go ahead.
Okay, slide 12. It looks like that's the one with the kettle drums, because that was a big issue for people. Right, proposed steel kettle drums in north, right, replaced with quieter equipment. It then looked like you had some other drums, but I'm not sure what's the quieter equipment, because that was an issue for people, was that they didn't want to hear drums all night in their house.
So we replaced the steel drums with ones that have a polyurethane skin that should be a quieter play instrument, but it's still maintaining the sense of like musical play that goes with the rest of the playground. And Val, we're pretty sure that with the overhead FDR and the sound of the traffic behind it, that the sound of those drums is not going to carry into the neighborhood.
Okay. All right, because that was the issue. All right, and slide 16. One of the other issues that we asked about was the seniors wanted backs to the seats, similar to the request that they had in the amphitheater, was that seniors wanted backs to the seats. So the seating, I mean, otherwise it looks really good in terms of that is the kind of seating they were talking about, and the fact that accessible can get there. But is the seating, are there backs to the seats? Because seniors like backs to the seats.
Yes, these do have backs on the seats.
Oh, okay, excellent. I have to say, I really appreciate the fact that you listen to the community, and I hope this is what we end up getting, because I have to say, this does look like you listen to us, but it just gets a little scary when I think about ESCR, that they listened and then showed up with something totally different. So thank you for listening and responding. Thanks.
That was that's really nice feedback to you. Thank you.
Yeah, that's it.
So I'm going to ask some questions and give some feedback. And I know Will and Lauren had mentioned that we kind of had seen this in its final design, but with COVID and ESCR, we haven't spent enough time. As it is, it's already 8:35, and we still need to spend some more time on this. Now, you did listen to a lot of the feedback, but some of the feedback was missed. And I'll go over just a couple of things. The basketball court, currently it's fenced in completely to prevent the ball from rolling. Is the basketball court fenced in completely? Because looking at design, and I know it's just design, and this is why we have trouble commenting sometimes, because you don't actually show what it is. It doesn't appear to be fenced in completely.
It is not fenced in completely, and there is a reason for that. And that is because, so you can see here, behind the basketball court, between the court and South Street, we've made sure that we do have a fence behind the backstop where people are going to be throwing the ball. And that fence does return. It comes around and down the sides of the court a small way. However, what you can see slightly here is that we also have, how do I explain this? What we have marked in here in these light dashed lines that you'll see coming, and it's towards, these lines go up to the center point of all of the flip-up gates, including behind the basketball court, although we're not showing the dashed lines there. That's a vehicular access corridor, and that's our third method of deployment if the push button operation fails and something else goes wrong. To make sure we absolutely can get those gates up in time, a vehicle needs to be able to pull up in front of the center of each of those gates, including the one in the basketball court, and physically lift it up. It has a large arm that comes out and attaches to the gate and pulls it up. So we need to be able to get a vehicle to pull up through one of these corridors on the sides turn into the basketball court and maneuver around and lift up this gate without needing to take down the fence or take out the basketball court in the event of emergency. So that's why we leave it the court open on either side of it. It's for the flood protection system and to make sure that we can operate that in case of emergency.
That's good.
Lauren, is there an opportunity to extend the fence a little bit so it at least goes as far as the sports bench? Because that might allay some of the concerns.
Let us look into that. I'm pretty sure if it's short there's a reason, although this goes back a ways in the design process. So let me double check and we can go back and revisit that. And I'll check with our civil engineering team because they study the vehicular turning movements and the radiuses we need. So let's make sure. We'll check.
I would say that would be a priority and something I would add to the resolution because that ball is going to go everywhere. And when you have the elevated structure in the middle, it's going to go downstairs and down the platform itself. And this is what I mean by it's very hard to pay attention to these little details and why sometimes we don't have comments until we see, like you mentioned, the finer details of design. I'm going to talk about something about balancing programming. I'm going to share my screen for a second because if you look at this particular area, the South Active Sport Performance area, which has the basketball courts, the really, really nice playground, and you add, let me just share my screen. Let me pick a screen. Sorry, I don't have the. I'm not going to share that one yet, but I will share this one. If I can go to view full screen mode. This is the BBE project. And I think sometimes we forget that we're talking about entire waterfront and it almost seems like we're not planning them together. But the initial discussion that Will and you brought to our community is that we needed to have equity among the waterfront, and we have completely disbalanced that down at this particular section, which is right next to the playground you just presented. They have a spray shower, which we said would be difficult to get underneath the FDR, but I understand this is the area that has sun exposure. You have an artificial play turf area, you have adult fitness equipment, you have a viewing deck with ADA access, which is all nice, and this is right next to the playground. So we've completely shifted the balance of programming to the south, which I understand it's just more area, more space. I get that, but we need to make up that sort of balance in other areas because we completely ignore that this project is happening and funding and being built. That's just one comment. The other comment.
Can I respond to that really quickly, please?
Sure.
So yeah, this is in Community Board 1, like you mentioned. The project does cross the CB1, CB3 boundary. I do just want to remind folks that we removed a 70 car parking lot in response to requests from the community. So all that's going to be publicly accessible space, and that's I think just to the north of this. And then the other part of this I think is, I completely hear you that even despite the constraints that are very clear, both the above and below ground infrastructure, et cetera, it is important to sort of look at it holistically. But the key part that's missing here is that this area is not getting flood protection. So, I do just.
No, I understand that. But when I walk down that South Street, I don't think of, okay, I've crossed into CB1 or CB3. I just look at it as this is my neighborhood and where I cross. And the other thing is, yes, we removed 70 parking spaces, but the original plan was to shift those parking spaces into our neighborhood, which was not looked upon favorably. So we need to balance that comment about what was actually going to happen. That being said, we understand that issue and we have some suggestions to sort of balance that equity now that we can see both designs and we understand what's going on holistically. And I'm going to share the other part of this screen because this is what I'm talking about in terms of missing our community missing things. In package 4, and I got to get my package right, we lost a lot of elements in package 3 and package 4. We lost a pavilion. We lost some of the, I'm not going to go to that slide, but the exercise area was actually supposed to be on turf, a raised turf, like the area in near Rutgers Slip. And it's not, it's on a flat piece of concrete. So we don't know about these things until they're completed. These are the fishing lookouts that were promised. Are they still in this particular design? Because I did not see them. They may be there, but are they part of package 4, or has this also been removed?
I'm not sure. Catherine, you're on the line? I'm not sure what year this design is from.
Oh, am I?
Is this the Brooklyn?
Am I
Yeah, we can
unmuted?
hear you.
Oh, great.
Catherine, we can hear you.
Great. Hi. So yes, the fish outs were a component of package 4. They were an add alternate throughout the design and approval process due to questions on the funding. And in the final construction, we were not able to include the fish outs.
I understand, but the community and the community board were never told that these were not included in the budget items. I understand the project gets delayed, but we didn't get the fishing get outs, which were important because there's a lot of fishing going on, and we wanted to avoid the conflicts between the people who fish and throw back hoods from kids walking by and getting stabbed in the eye, which has happened on at least 2 occasions. But I understand we don't know what's being taken in or taken out until the final design is complete and we take a tour. I'm just going over this to paint a broader picture of why it's important that this design work and that this design be equitable for the people, because if you cross the border, as Will has mentioned, to CB1, it's a completely different area because they somehow managed to get everything in there.
And it's also not getting flood protection.
Right. I understand. Well, not yet, but I imagine that's going to happen.
We are working on it, but I think that's an important thing.
No, I understand.
Trevor, can I add in real quick too? The BBE project includes the fish station further north in the project.
So CB1 gets a fish.
No,
station.
sorry. The BBE project that extends through both CB1 and CB3. The fish station is further north. It is in CB3. If you remember that component of the project.
No, I do remember. It's just that I don't know what is taken out until I do the tour walk and I say, well, what happened to this?
Understood. And I think so. Will and I have been talking too. We want to come back and update you guys on BBE since that was delayed due to COVID, like so many other projects, more so delayed than the BMCR design. So we will plan to come back and talk about BBE in the near future.
And 2 more comments before I go into questions from the community and talk about the resolution we're going to present. And the other very important thing we talked about was sidewalks. Right now, we're proposing a new sidewalk. There's cars parked on there, so you cannot walk. You have to walk in the bike lane, which causes all types of conflicts. I've taken a walk along the west side, and they managed to put bollards or the concrete stones, which you could use, at the entrances to the walkways, because it is very dangerous to cross. We need ways to slow down traffic because this is a NORC community where there are a lot of senior citizens, and I can tell you right now, the priority is, and we've talked about this before, pedestrians first, and we do not have that in this design. The other issue with the scope of work not including art, which I don't know how that managed to happen or why that's not a priority. We've done it in the ESCR with some of the grading and some of the walkways to add art to that particular area. We have the columns to provide artwork or some type of artwork, provide something there, but we can't simply say this is not part of the scope. In every particular design that I've seen, including parks, there's some artistic element, and to say that there's not any opportunity here or it's not part of the scope, I think is wrong, especially since we started with the idea of rebuild by design. So I think it's important, and we're going to add that to the resolution. There are ways to do it that aren't necessarily expensive, just artistic things. You can do it in playgrounds, you can do it in design, you can do it with lighting, but I think this is the only time we're going to build this that we cannot continue a stretch of land and say we can't do bathrooms and we can't do art, not in a low-income community. The step down at Pier 35, which is extremely popular, I didn't see that in the design. I just assume it's part. Let me just stop sharing my screen. The step down at Pier 35, extremely popular, one of the most popular places in the city. I assume that's still going to stay there.
The step down, would you mind specifying?
It's the it's the get down right there at Pier 35 or on the Esplanade, just south of Pier 35. That there's no change. There's no change to that.
Okay. No, thank you, Catherine. I'm just saying when I look at drawings, it's hard for us to comment.
That is part of, as Lauren. Got it. So I think the overall theme is that the bulkhead the railing and the esplanade at the water's edge is not touched, including the planters and the seating that faces out to the water along the edge of the esplanade, the water's edge.
My last comment, and it's also will be in the draft, is that the area, and you addressed it to a certain extent, with the exercise equipment is extremely popular, and someone mapped it as a fitness park, and we need to keep it that way. Also, the area at Rutgers Slip and South, where there's a performance area, is the only place where people perform every single day. You put seating there, and you move the performance area, or you have an open space at Pike Slip, which is too noisy, and no one performs there at all. So a simple swap of the seating for that particular area to leave that space open and clear, since that's also the path from the subway, which most people use. And that shouldn't, that's not a cost issue. It's just a balance of what is actually needed in the neighborhood. And that is to keep that as a exercise fitness area and to keep that performance space, which is used every single day in that particular area, and move it to, and take out and move the seats to Pike, because no one performs there, because number one, it's just too noisy with the train and the traffic in that particular area. Those are my initial comments, and I'm going to go to committee members. I know that I spent a lot of time, but this is important. $250 million, and you only get one chance. So, well, maybe two. Package 4 is first chance. Committee members? No. Michael, can you handle? I have to change my earpiece. It's going dead. So if you can. I can hear it on my computer, but I'm going to shut my camera. So if you can take questions from committee members.
Sure. There's no committee members. Do you want me to do the public?
I'm sorry, public. Can we just
sure. The only hand we have up is Grace. Grace, I'm not going to put the timer up, but if you can just try to keep it to 2 minutes, I'd appreciate it.
Hey, Grace. How are you?
Hey, Grace. Thank you for the presentation, Lauren, and going over the design elements. I have a few questions regarding about the play area, actually by Rutgers Slip by us. Am I correct that there's no fencing around any of the climbers as well as the toddler area? It's just open space. And secondly, let me continue with that. Also with the play structure, that huge one, which is really nice. The only concern is I think it serves 5 to 12, correct? And there's probably certain access points to get onto it. But the concern is when there's the different age groups, the older ones, it doesn't play well because, they're all running around and it's so narrow. So somehow that's why there's a lot of play areas where they break up the structure, where the older kids are playing in one area and the younger ones, the toddlers, are a different one. The concern is when there's like the ramp, it's not enough room for them to run around if they're all, cluttered and they're all running around, and it just causes accidents sometimes, and that's a safety issue. With the basketball court, I understand the variable access and everything. The concern about that is where when the fence is not high enough or long enough, people that are sitting right by the picnic area or the other area where there's the auditorium, they get hit by the ball. And that's not good because it can be, very dangerous, And another thing about what I see that there are no mention about bike traffic or stop signs. So my concern is, as a mother with that open space of the kids area, they can run into the bike lane easily, and it's hard to chase them. And it's so close that to the bike lane, and bikes are going flying by. As a mother and as a person who got hit 4 times, and 2 of those times I was sent to the hospital with very severe injuries. One when I was 36 months pregnant, and the other time, the last one, I was permanently,
I was hospitalized, and I was so severe that I suffered permanent damage to one of my sensories. So I really plead that there needs to be bike lights, bike strips, as well as pedestrian walking signs to prevent any of these incidents from happening, especially when there's toddlers and elders in this area that, where they do Tai Chi and exercise from, in the morning. So that's my comments. And if you can answer some of these.
Thank you, Grace.
Yeah, I can speak to the first few. So for mentioned the play area in the north and the climbing structure and wanting to know about fencing there. So the play area, the north play area is fenced. Actually, both of the play areas are fenced. They do have fencing around them. We understand that that's important for parents to be able to watch their kids. The play area in the north is actually fenced on 4 sides, but there's an opening on the side that's right next to the flip-up gates, and that's where we have benches for the parents to sit and watch. And so there's still an enclosure for the kids. They're still kept in, and not just running freely. For the play area in the south, the 5 to 12 area and the 2 to 5 area are separated. There's not a clear fence in between, but they're 2 separate areas. We do understand it's kind of important to keep the different age ranges at least a little bit apart from each other, so the big kids aren't trampling all over the little kids. We'll take another look at the design of the ramp system. We've been working really closely with playground designers on that play area design, making sure we're trying to prioritize fully accessible play. But I hear your point about wanting to make sure we have space for kids to also run around. So we'll look at that. The fencing on the basketball court, as Ricardo and I were kind of talking about earlier, we will go back and I'll look at the sides of the fence and see if we can make that a little bit longer. I totally hear your concern. Nobody really wants a basketball like in their potato salad. So we'll make sure that we've mitigated that as much as we possibly can, while still making sure that the gates can be deployed. And as for bike safety, is that something that would EDC like to take that one? We've been working with DOT closely on the design of the bike lane.
Right. I think, one other, also, Lauren, do you mind if we pull the?
Sure. Oh yeah, it's not showing my screen anymore, am I? I'm the one that's patient, but none of you.
Right. Just the detail of the playground could be helpful.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, Grace, we've definitely heard and passed along those comments to our partners at DOT. We do work with them quite a bit in terms of the design of the bike lanes. I think the
Do you want the south play or the north? Did you want the north play area or any?
I'm trying to think. The what's the one by Pike maybe?
This one?
Yeah, Grace, does that help answer your question with the fence?
We've got fencing on the water side, and then it comes around the sides on both this end and that end. And then it also returns and pulls back a little ways where it then connects to benches. We wanted to make sure we've got seating for parents to be able to hang out and watch the kids. And there's a slight opening here, and that also serves as companion seating next to the precast benches. So the only opening in the enclosure is right in the center of the play area. But again, parents are seated all around and able to watch and keep an eye and supervise their kids. So you're not going to have kids like just, darting off. My nieces are both very young, under 5, and I know how quickly they can run and get away. So we do have it as an enclosed space.
Okay, good. Sounds good. And then
go ahead.
Oh, Ricardo, go right ahead.
Oh, I was going to note that the climber area is where the 3 climbers are. That is perhaps not fenced, Lauren.
Correct. That's not.
That is more open. Yeah, because the kids are older and they probably more capable of.
Yeah, and here we would run into issues of we don't want to put a fence too close to where the kids are climbing up there and encroaching on the safety zone, the fall zone. We do have safety surfacing all around it.
And I just wanted to note that at Peck Slip, which is just south of here, we have put where people are going to be going from a walking area, like a sidewalk, to a street. We put these these pavers with warning bumps, Is that something that we can do here to maybe keep people out of, is that what this strip is? Is that are those warning bumps to keep people out of the bikeway?
Yeah, so there's warning pavers on either side of the bike lane. And this is actually, I mean, this rendering up here, our project is putting in a portion of the bike lane or kind of reconstructing it south of Catherine Slip. But everything north of Catherine Slip is an existing bike lane, and we're not touching that. We're not ripping it up or rebuilding it. So this is the what we're trying to show illustratively here is the existing condition of the bike lane.
Ricardo, just for info, we do have a resolution about these intersections, which, as you can see from this picture, are very dangerous, and not on the west side, because what we keep hearing, it's not in our scope, but it's bad design if you don't think about the two together. I understand DOT, but if you don't want to wait for someone to get hit and killed to say, oh, maybe we should do something about it. We see it right here. We're talking about it. This is going to be archived. No bikes slow down at those intersections. In fact, they tell you to get out the bike lane because they think that the intersection where you cross is an area where they can't stop. We've asked for simple solution. They're on the west side. It's mostly signage, to be honest, saying slow down pedestrians. If you need inspiration, the west side has a ton of suggestions, including these steel bollards, which if they're, we can save money and use concrete ones or boulders. But we need to have some separation. If you look right now, there's some kids walking over, older folks, and it is extremely dangerous. And we're building a new Esplanade that will have more people there, and we're not addressing a situation. To me, that's bad design, and it's you know, something that can be handled fairly easily.
So a couple things on that. Catherine, maybe you can chime in here, but I think so. The horizontal rumble strips that will go across the bike lane, I don't think appear in this photo or in this rendering. There's the rumble pavement on the edges to sort of like, that makes it difficult for the cyclist to exit. And then I think, Catherine, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think we're adding some sort of like yield to pedestrian type signage. Is that right?
Yeah, that's right. The yield to pedestrian and other kind of greenway signage will be added along here.
Okay.
So yeah, that's also not shown in the rendering.
That's new from what's existing today.
Yes, there's not. I don't believe there's any. Yeah, we don't have any signage.
There's
along
only
this specific
one.
bike lane. Yeah,
right. There's one with a light down at, I forget the intersection, but in front of the fire department.
At Clinton, they have a light because of the cyclists that the bike lane crosses South Street there. I think DOT discussed that at one of our last either presentations or conversations. I can't remember, but yes, there's a light there because the cyclists are crossing South Street.
Yes, and my point exactly, that the attention is paid to cyclists and not pedestrians, because the conflicts between pedestrians and cyclists are great. And if there is an issue with the cyclist or or if there's water puddling in the bicyclist lane, we get lots of complaints. But if we have the same issue in sidewalks where people aren't able to walk, we don't get the same attention. And I've said this from the beginning that we need to look at this design for this particular area as pedestrians first. We have a super highway right now of bikes, and I know bikes love this area because it's completely protected. It's underneath the FDR, and you can go pretty fast, but we have a lot of people who cross over. But I've mentioned that we have a resolution on it. We're going to press for that continuously, because I don't want to hear from EDC that, you know, well, that's DOT and we can't do anything about it. This is a joint project, just like ESCR, and there are things that can be done together if you deem a priority, and this is a priority. I don't want anyone else to wind up in the hospital because they got hit by a bike crossing this particular intersection.
Great. So maybe, Catherine, we can pull together like an itemized list of the sites where there'll be rumble strips, like the locations we're adding yield to pedestrian signage, that kind of stuff. Get it over soon.
Yep, Lauren, we can work on that.
Cool. We can figure that out.
I'll go to Robin first and then Val.
Hi, as the resident biker on the committee here, I just want to say that, yes, it's more helpful to have those, like on the west side, there are almost stop signs and stop lights, and blinking lights that are put in on the bike lanes, and those are very helpful. It's mirroring almost the traffic lights, much more than any pavers or anything on the pavement, because then you also are creating dangers for bikers when those things get loose or they're jumbly. So that's something to consider. You don't want bikers then having accidents and flying off their bikes. But it's very effective when you see, flashing lights and whatnot. So I know those might be ugly, but again, I'm talking. I think that's what Trevor's referring to. I think that, and what would really be great within the design also as a biker to really, it seems and it looks like it's separated out as a bike lane, but, oftentimes pedestrians, how do you make it really look different so that people know that they're walking into a bike lane or that it is a bike lane? That's the other thing.
Right.
And maybe it's, a color scope. I don't know what it might be. I think the green or blue painted pavements that the city uses on the streets is a very effective way, as much as possible.
Right. Thanks, Robin. And I think, folks have mentioned the west side. Trevor and Grace, you've wisely noted the differences here. And I think the challenge here is that in place of being able to install physical separation between the bike lane, the pedestrian area, the playground, et cetera. Obviously there's the playground fencing. But like Lauren said, that part about the maintenance vehicles being able to pull up directly over the sidewalk and, to manually deploy the flood protection if needed. That's something, unfortunately, that really prevents the wholesale use of bollards, at least to that kind of effect that we see on the west side. Because, the flood protection, like we've noted, is going to be automatically mechanically deployed, but we always need to have a backup in case something goes wrong. So that does make it challenging, to sort of have like a long line of bollards or other sort of obstructions there.
Understood, but it's just never been addressed at any of the meetings or any of the community meetings about what the possibilities are or what the tool could be for these particular issues, because this has been the number one priority since we started. One of the slides said the balls were too pricey as opposed to the ability for trucks to get up, and I can't imagine they need to access every particular area. So there are areas for that, but I'm going to go to Val next.
Yeah, the trucks every 40 or 50 feet or so. So it's quite often. But yeah, sorry, go ahead, Val.
No, just two things. I think that it was brought up before about some kind of fencing by the ping pong tables, because ping pong tends to be one of those type activities that the ball tends to go off the table and, go somewhere. And I think it was brought up before that the fear was that the ball would go towards the water and the kids would, kind of run towards the water to get the ball. So that was one. And the other thing is just that I think one of the issues with the basketball courts and the fencing, because I know Power Partnership has brought this up, is that we have a lot of older people that are now watching these Prolia commercials. And, it's very much about a ball coming at you, and it makes it look to a lot of older people like they're going to get really, really sick and hurt in terms of their bones. So that was just the two things. That's it.
Thank you.
Yep. So
Go ahead. Lauren, let me give you one pause. Michael, if you could prep the reso after Lauren finishes.
yeah, I just wanted to speak directly to Val's comment about the fencing on the ping pong tables. So again, well, we did dash in the vehicular access that's needed on the dry side, and unfortunately didn't dash it in on the wet side. But again, we need continuous vehicular access along the waterfront. That's for much slower moving but more frequently occurring parks maintenance vehicles. It's also in the event of emergencies for FDNY to be able to get an emergency rig down there. And so it gets, again, we're just really, really constrained on space here. And so we get very tight along the waterfront, and we need to maintain a 12-foot corridor between the planter that's here that causes an obstruction and any furnishings or materials. So our ping pong tables are able to fit there, but to put a fence across here and fence in the ping pong area would get in the way of the vehicular access. And again, these aren't like rapidly moving, it's not high-speed traffic, it's not endangering the program, people would move out of the way, but we actually can't install a fence across here. So again, we're always dealing with there's tricky situations in this design and trade-offs. So it's either we try to incorporate the active programming, but maybe can't have a fence where we would like to have one, or else we have to just take that active program out and we're installing more, just more benches and other elements around here. So we're hoping that this works, and hoping the planter also acts as a little bit of a buffer so people aren't losing too many balls into the East River.
Lauren, quick question. The orientation of the ping pong tables for play is which way?
This way. There's actually, yeah, back and forth this way.
All
So standing on this side and someone standing on this side, not in the ball towards the river.
Okay. I think, I know I've exhausted a bunch of people with my questions, so we're going to go to the resolution, which is quite lengthy and as much detail as I could find from going over this PDF with the microscope. And just keep in mind, this is draft language, folks. We can add more. And I don't know if Ryan, if you want to read it, because it is 3 pages, or Michael, if you want to read it.
Do you want me to read it, Trevor? Because
Michael.
I can read it. It's fine.
Okay. Because we're going to make some changes as we go along. I took some time to draft this.
So Ryan, are you able to edit this while you don't have the same problem that you have with the other document?
yes, no, this is okay. Thanks.
Okay. All right. So folks, just so you know, you won't see the edits on the screen because I'm on my computer and Ryan's on her computer and we don't live together. Okay, so title, Site Plan for the 6th Phase of the East River Waterfront Esplanade Project, Brooklyn Bridge, Montgomery Coastal Resiliency, BMCR. Whereas the 6th phase of the East River Waterfront Esplanade Project, ERWE, known as Brooklyn Bridge, Montgomery Coastal Resiliency, BMCR, has been referred to Manhattan Community Board 3 for site plan review, and whereas this project stretches along the East River waterfront in the Two Bridges neighborhood from the Brooklyn Bridge to Montgomery Street, and whereas this is a critical infrastructure project for flood protection in Lower Manhattan and the first of this type in all of New York City.
I'll say, Michael, Lauren, I want to, or Will, or Lauren, I want to confirm that's true.
Well, let's see. There are roller gates used as part of ESCR, but I think in terms of a project that is a linear line of flip up gates, yeah, that's true.
All right, we'll leave it like that. All right, go ahead, Michael.
All right. Whereas BMCR will provide protection of
We're going to edit that. Go ahead.
protection to a vulnerable and low-income neighborhood classified as an environmental justice area by New York City environmental justice law due to factors including history of systematic racism and inequitable resource distribution. And whereas the genesis of this project is from the federal Rebuild by Design competition that was guided by equitable design principles that would focus not only on physical infrastructure in Lower Manhattan, but also on the 95,000 low-income elderly and disabled city residents impacted by Hurricane Sandy. So the site plan must show design outcomes, I guess that T is erroneous, that meet the needs of these vulnerable residents. And whereas there remains a number of serious concerns with the overall site plan and programming at BMCR that must be addressed, including the area has no official closing time like a typical public park and is active at all times despite being directly adjacent to residential blocks. There are no bathrooms in the site plan, which is unacceptable for a project area of this, that is expected.
Michael, can you, because Ryan is making edits and she's generally pretty good, you can edit as you speak if you want to, or Ryan, if you pick up something, feel free to edit.
Sure. So a project area of this magnitude that is expected to have a large number of active daily users. There are no sculptures or other artistic representations along the BMCR section of the East River waterfront. And whereas specific to the South active sport performance area, the basketball court, and other active items proposed between Robert F. Wagner Place and Catherine Slip were moved from the northern portion of the BMCR area to an area which is already heavy with programming and has similar amenities to the concurrent Brooklyn Bridge Esplanade BBE project. And whereas this is concentrating active infrastructure in the southern part of the BMCR area.
Pause there, Michael. This is obviously draft, and some of the language I want to change based on what Will and Lauren's comments about the actual area of programming. So for now, we're going to leave that out. I'll get some other whereas language. So just continue.
So I'm just skipping this whereas altogether?
Yes.
All right. Whereas specific to the northern passive pocket and north active BMCR areas, the current design includes a loss of a basketball court, turf field, bocce court, and fitness equipment from an area which would largely serve the lower income residents of Community District 3 and the designated environmental justice area. And whereas fitness equipment was recently installed in this area and has proven to be very popular, especially for the seniors, there is no need for replacement with inferior equipment. And whereas many fitness elements are being removed and replaced with passive seating, which makes up the majority of the infrastructure in the proposal for the northern area. And whereas the new design includes a performance space at Pike Slip, which is not where residents currently perform due to its noisy location underneath the Manhattan Bridge. And whereas the area adjacent to Rutgers Slip is by far the most heavily used location along the waterfront, has already been mapped as a fitness park, is where all performances take place due to unique sight lines and some noise baffling. Is that right?
For now it is.
And already includes a step down that allows for close waterfront views. Therefore, be it resolved, the following overall design issues in the BMCR site plan must be addressed before the final plan is approved.
I'm going to change that language to make it a bit stronger based on the comments that we have, and I'm going to change it that we do not approve of this site plan unless these issues are addressed.
Okay. There needs to be more lighting in all areas, not just at view corridors. There needs to be creative play with lighting and fixtures. There needs to be more flood resiliency signage, markers, and historical references. There needs to be signage that identifies the space and the project itself, like the large signs that identify the park, as we have seen on the west side of Manhattan, which will help with stewardship. There needs to be more water fountains, especially near the play areas. There must be public bathrooms. As previously expressed in the June 2019 CB3 resolution, all crosswalks must have crosswalk lights and bollards to avoid dangerous conflicts for pedestrians when crossing streets, especially considering the new play area for children. This is a pedestrian-heavy north area where 90% of the population walk to get to local destinations. There must be enhanced pedestrian safety measures in the design, as we have seen on the west side of Manhattan. There needs to be more art and culture integrated into the plan. There needs to be a storage container for Esplanade stewardship, similar to the park storage structure shown in the design. There needs to be locked electrical hookups included at the performance stage area. The same fitness equipment that was just installed should remain and not be replaced with new equipment. And the savings should be used for a glider, dog run, and storage. A dog run should be added at Market Slip area to balance programming. The ping pong table should be replaced with a glider for equitable distribution of amenities. The northern section should be more creative with seating and replace some of the seating with other designed elements so that amenities are distributed more equitably. There needs to be cameras, there should be a B there, for safety and to protect critical infrastructure from terrorism. The Rutgers Slip view corridor must be preserved as a performance area, and the fitness park should remain. That's it.
Now, this was written quickly and passed between different word processing programs. So some of the stuff is words are missing, but Val, your hand is raised.
Val?
Yeah, just sorry. In terms of what, I don't, it's kind of hard to follow at points. So in terms of, what are you saying is at Rutgers that needs to be changed or whatever? I don't quite get it.
At Rutgers Slip, there's a performance area where there's a lot of Tai Chi dancers. A lot of the seniors actually do, I think it's ballroom dancing in addition to the Tai Chi. That's where people go to perform. Last summer, all the fitness classes were there that were unofficial, like the boxing class. It's a area because of its ease to get to, because it's you walk from the subway straight there, that people use for performances. What they're proposing is to make the Pike Slip area, which is the area, if you go down Pike Slip and it ends at South Street, there's a clear open area, but nobody uses that particular section for performance at all. There's never been anyone. We tried to use it one time, it was just too noisy. So I'm asking to preserve that area at Ruckus Slip and move that seating to Pike Slip because no one performs there.
That's my question. So I don't quite get what exactly was planned for Ruckus Slip where you want the performance area now. What was the plan for there?
They moved seating there.
Oh, just plain seating.
Yeah, so we just want it to be clear so that people can do Tai Chi and ballroom dancing.
Oh, okay. So it's just plain seating. Okay.
Correct. Ryan?
Yeah, I just wanted to reemphasize that as an artist. I walked recently along that whole strip, and what Trevor's saying is absolutely true. It's impossible to perform under that Pike Slip area. The noise is terrible for performance. It's also terrible for people wanting to hang out there. That's why people avoid it. Whereas the area that he's discussing, actually the noise is much more mitigated and it makes it feasible. So as an artist, just want to agree with that.
Josie?
I was just wondering, is there some way to put like the hazard lights or the yield lights along the path where the playground and that whole area is for the bikers so that they will start slowing down from a distance?
In other words, a children at play sort of sign?
Yeah, so I think.
Josie, I muted you because of the feedback. Josie, you have to unmute yourself again.
That they would be able to start slowing down from a distance before they even get to the area where all the, the playground area is and the people are. So maybe they'll be warned way ahead of time because, they're flying. These bikers are flying. So we have to kind of, I don't know, slow them down from a long way, far away from us or far away from the play area.
So Josie, what I'm hearing isn't it as part of this pedestrian safety measures for the signs that we mentioned to include signs that say children at play up ahead or similar.
Yeah. Or the hazard lights, the ones the big yellow ones, because that's what they pay attention to, these guys. They don't read signs. They just, you know what I mean.
Understood.
Thanks.
Ryan, did you get that? It would be added to, there must be enhanced pedestrian safety measures in the design. Okay. I'm going to go to Robin since, and then I'll get Val after Robin. Go ahead, Robin.
I don't suppose you could add this in, but it seems to me that the bike lane needs to be moved into the street and it should come off of this park completely because, there's all this conflict. So that's not up to this project. It would turn into a DOT project, but it's like it can't be a fight constantly amongst bikers and pedestrians, and it seems like there's a big conflict. So I don't know what you do about that.
No,
this resolution.
I wouldn't put it in this resolution, and I hear you. I would simply like to see what they've done on the west side. Slightly richer neighborhood, but I think we can get that here.
Sure. Okay.
Val?
Yeah, just in terms of there must be public bathrooms and safety measures employed. I mean, we're in the middle of a pandemic. If we haven't learned anything, it's like, yeah, you need some safety measures because what the next person does impacts the next person. So I think that there must be public bathrooms. It has to be added with safety measures, with safety and health measures.
Yeah, I just took the language from Pier 42. Actually, you were one of the ones that proposed bathrooms at Pier 42, so I just took the
No,
language.
I don't think I did. I could tell you during the pandemic, not let's no. Because I'm saying right here, there must be
No, I hear you, Val. I hear you.
safety and health measures, that's all.
Okay.
Trevor, can I just say one thing? I don't want to, and I want to say that I agree first with you and everyone else who's saying that we need some sort of bollards or something in the bike lanes, but I just want to remind everyone that the bollards on the west side bike lane only got installed after a terrorist drove a pickup truck down the bike lane, killing many people.
Yeah, and I didn't mention that here, Michael, and I'm well aware of that. I try to refrain from mentioning issues like that, but if you go down South Street, that exact same situation can happen. But as Lauren and Will have mentioned, I understand the need for access to the flood protection system. So I also propose cameras in the area because I think this is critical infrastructure that we're not thinking about that. They need to operate, and if they do not operate, the whole neighborhood will be flooded. And what will be the purpose? I don't care if they need to be monitored by OEM, but we need some sort of protection. So I agree with you, Michael. I just hate to keep mentioning that word because we have the exact same exposure on South Street. But Will mentioned every 40 feet, they need access, or every 45 or something similar. So I think there are ways that we can design it so we can ensure the safety of people.
Lauren,
And I've mentioned this before. Go ahead, Will. Sorry.
Trevor, I just wanted to check that. Lauren, did I get that correct? It's approximately every 50 feet or so that we need a 15-foot access chute. Is that right?
The gate panels themselves are typically 40 feet wide, and we need a 12-foot access panel at the center point of it. So it's actually a little less. Yeah, about every 30 feet.
Thank you.
Right, and I think that if we use creative bollards or concrete boulders, along with cameras, we might be able to avoid issues, especially considering this is the route that the president takes. I don't know if Daniel still has his hand up. Daniel?
Yeah, I was just going to mention with the bollards on the west side, bikers did not really like those in the first place. And they, like, for a separated bike lane, it made it extra obtrusive, and Hudson River Park had to buy specialty gardening and emergency vehicle equipment, which I don't see a non-state trustee having the money to buy those things. So it's just about the bike lane.
No, I hear you, Daniel, and the constraints that are there's different constraints for that particular area. We have constraints that will further restrict the spacing on that because of the need for access for the protection. So we're not asking for the exact look on the west side. We're just asking for some measure of safety. Because with the need for access to the flood protection gates, we're not going to get that type of closeness. And I know exactly what you're talking about. We're not going to get that type of closeness. Just something similar to protect pedestrians. And Michael, I don't see any other hands. Do you?
No, sir.
All right. So this will be cleaned up for grammatical issues. I don't take credit for all of them, but I take credit for some of them. So I need a motion to approve.
So motioned.
Motion to approve.
Ryan, can you take a vote?
Hold on 1 second. Trevor Holland,
Yes.
Kay Webster,
Yes.
Ryan Gillum, yes. David Adams,
Yes.
Yaron Altman, Carlin Chan. Carlin? Carlin?
Yes. Yes.
Valentina Jones,
Yes.
Michael Marino,
Sorry, yes.
Robin Chattel,
Yes.
Josephine Velez,
Yes.
Troy Velez. That's it.
And one last thing, we'll find you a dog run advocacy group if we can get that dog running. I don't think that's a problem. And I think the area in front of Manhattan Storage might be ideal. It's wide. Everybody has a pet nowadays, everybody. I can find you a group, I can guarantee that. And I think that's not as expensive as you think because you're really restructuring space and you're adding an amenity to an area. That being said, the resolution passes. We have one last thing on the agenda. Will's going to give us a brief update. We have another draft agenda. Keep in mind that we've been holding off on these for quite some time for ESCR. So I know folks have been requesting some action for Pier 42, and we're going to attempt to do that tonight. So Will, if you want to get an update on Pier 42, please go ahead.
Yeah, Trevor, so I don't have much to add. Like I mentioned over email, my colleagues from Parks aren't here. And I think a lot of the questions pertain to the sort of operational aspects of the Pier 42 plan, including the request for temporary restrooms, for example. I think, to sort of recap, we completed the design process in, I guess I want to say in 2019 and 2020. As part of the ESCR project, we worked with the Parks Department, which the Parks Department essentially designated the sorts of amenities to go on the pier deck, and we added the pier deck to the scope of our Pier 42 project. So the project was just originally going to be the Upland Park, and then we added the activation of the pier deck as a sort of mitigation for the ESCR, during construction. Definitely understand that there's feedback from the community that is in a lot of ways kind of similar to what we hear with BMCR, which is regarding the restrooms, need for shade and drinking fountains and that sort of thing. Like I've mentioned before, the pier deck is very much a temporary activation. It doesn't preclude any sort of future construction, but that was sort of done quickly in order to be able to get the process up and running and get it moving quickly in time to open during ESCR construction. So, I know that there still are some open questions of whether, from an operations standpoint, the Parks Department can provide temporary restrooms or that sort of thing. But nothing to note in specific on construction. The construction fence is up. We are moving on the project. The seawall work is nearly complete, to be followed by sewer work, and then the parks, both the Upland Park and the pier deck, should begin construction sometime this summer. We have a community construction liaison, Rick, and if anybody has any questions, I or him can answer that about construction itself. But Trevor, I understand that most of the questions are specifically on design. So I think I can maybe offer some clarifying answers here and there, but I do understand that you all are working on a resolution for tonight.
Correct. Just for the committee purposes of this meeting, a lot of the things that have been addressed before in the resolution. I even added language specific for Val for the bathrooms that is a little better because I understand what she's saying. So you'll see it in the resolution.
Would you like me to read this?
Yes.
All right. Parks and EDC Pier 42 interim pier deck design update. Hold on, let me make it bigger for David Adams. There we go. Whereas the Pier 42 interim pier deck is intended to address recreation needs in Community District 3 during the construction of the East Side Coastal Resiliency ESCR project, which will require the temporary closure of East River Park and its recreation areas. And whereas the Pier 42 interim pier deck is located in zip code 10002, which is also an environmental justice area according to the New York City Mayor's Office of Climate Policy and New York City local law, which defines environmental justice areas as low-income or minority communities based on US Census data, which have been and continue to be more vulnerable to potential environmental injustices due to factors including history of systemic racism and inequitable resource distribution.
Pause there, Michael. Ryan, just to note that our language is the same, but it's a little different. So I want to make sure we're able to mirror the same language for BMCR. But I can correct that. It's not wrong. It's just that we're talking about the same thing, but the language is just slightly different. Go ahead, Michael.
Yep. Whereas the pier deck was previously used as a parking lot and requires significant upgrades and amenities to make it functional, safe, and comfortable park, I think you mean, that serves the local community and meets their needs, in addition to providing space for recreational activities that would otherwise be served by East River Park. And whereas there are specific conditions at Pier 42 that the interim pier deck design must respond to, including 1, need for shade as the current pier deck is directly exposed to the sun and lacks greenery. 2, the need for public restrooms as the area is already lacking in bathroom facilities and the number of visitors will likely increase dramatically when the park is open. And 3, infrastructure to encourage stewardship of the new community resource. And therefore, be it resolved, Manhattan Community Board 3 has identified the following features which should be included in Pier 42 interim pier deck design. A series of large planters which can use ESCR materials and provide much needed greenery and shade. Physical coverage to provide shade for the tables which are otherwise directly exposed to the sun. Bathrooms with wash features to meet the significant user demand in the area, which is likely to increase when the interim deck amenities are completed and opened. A shed to facilitate and encourage park stewardship.
I'm going to add one more thing. Sorry, go ahead.
I was just going to say, I think the bullet 1, maybe we should say, can you ESCR plant materials? Because that's what you mean, right?
Correct.
Okay.
And also, one of the things we forgot is to lower the fences along the waterfront.
Okay. And Ryan,
I don't remember.
You're editing this, right, Ryan? Okay.
And I just want to ask EDC I think, and this is a combination of comments from people, not just it's, input from the community. The deck was previously used as a parking lot. This particular deck was a parking lot. I know the other Pier 42 area but was the deck itself used as a parking lot?
I'm not sure, frankly. I know it was a warehouse of some sort. I'm not sure of the previous use.
All right, so we'll take that out for now and make sure we get it correct. Committee members, I see Val has her hand raised.
All right, just one thing. It says here ZIP 102, which is also an environmental justice area. Is the whole ZIP? Because I did one area, with that environmental justice map, and I did the survey, that I put in a couple of different addresses on the Lower East Side in ZIP 102, and there was one address I put in that was not an environmental justice area, and another one that I did. So is this correct that the whole ZIP is environmental justice area? Just, because
Val, you're absolutely right. You're absolutely correct. The entire ZIP is not EJA or environmental justice area. You're correct. So we're going to take that out. I will update it with language that specifies this particular area, but you're right. The entire ZIP is not 1,000. It's not an EJA area.
Okay. All right. Thanks.
Good catch. That's actually a good catch.
You can probably just take the zip code part out of it. You don't need it.
Yeah. Take the zip out of it.
Say that the site is within the environmental justice area.
We're just going to take that zip out because it's not the entire zip.
You've got a member of the public with their hand up, Trevor.
Sure. Let me clear the committee first. Any other questions? And then we're going to take Tommy, and then we're going to vote on this. Committee questions. Okay, go ahead, Tommy.
Hi, Will. Couple of questions. Did you take part in any of the value engineering study meetings?
Tommy, I'm going to limit this. I'm going to allow this question, but I'm really going to limit this to Pier 42. This is the reason why.
It's part of Pier 42, Trevor.
I'm not sure, Tommy, what you're referring to.
The value engineering study. Did you take part in any of those meetings?
No, I don't know what that is.
You don't know what the value engineering study is? That's the ESCR value engineering study?
Oh, no, EDC didn't work on ESCR.
Okay. Secondly, are you aware, have you read the unredacted report? And this has to do with Pier 42, Trevor, please. Have you read the unredacted report?
No, I haven't. EDC doesn't work on that project.
Okay. Are you aware that they discussed Pier 42, and in it, in the newly unredacted portion, they said that they would not, they could have built a brand new Pier 42, not a temporary pier, but the only reason they did not was because they were concerned about alienation and that the community would be entitled. And this relates to the other projects too, Trevor, because this community was cheated out of hundreds of millions of dollars that they were entitled to for mitigation by the city in this plan. We could have had money for the bathrooms. We could have had money for for a brand new Pier 42, and it's all now unredacted. I would suggest that each of the members of the community board have an obligation now to go back and read the unredacted report, because it pertains to Pier 42, it pertains to all the mitigation that we're entitled to, and the fact that they're telling us they don't have money is pure nonsense. We're entitled to that money, and they're just not, and these excuses are lame. So I just would encourage every member of the community board to now go look and read the unredacted value engineering report.
Thanks, Tommy. Trevor, are you frozen?
No, I let him speak because I wanted to hear what he had to say. But I wasn't, Tommy, I know we're done. I appreciate that, and we're going to move on. But I was just, we get a little bit of criticism that we don't spend a lot of time on the other elements of our area. So I was just really trying to focus on that. And this, we took us a bit of time to get this resolution for 42 and BMCR. So I appreciate your concern. I guess, and I understand what you're saying because I'm on page 242. I'll get to the end sooner or later. So I understand what you're saying about if there was alienation, we would have been entitled to about 313 million for mitigation. But for now, we're going to focus on this interim deck. And since there is a lot of money on the table, I'm sure we can get bathrooms at Pier 42 and along the waterfront on BMCR, because that should be mitigation also. So I appreciate that. Any other questions?
Motion to approve the resolution.
Motion to approve.
Well, I'm hearing a second from Carlin, correct?
Well, you needed a motion. I motion to, whether mine is a motion or a second, it's all good.
Okay. 9:39. All right, so let's take a vote, Ryan.
Trevor Holland,
Yes.
Kay Webster,
Yes.
Brian Gillum, yes. David Adams,
Yes.
Yaron Altman, Carlin Chan,
Yes.
Valentina Jones,
Yes.
Michael Marino,
Yes.
Robin Chattel,
Yes.
Josephine Velez,
Yes.
Troy Velez. That's it.
All right, thank you, the team from EDC, and any, Lauren, I see you still on, but thank you for that update and information. Finally got a resolution for 42 and BMCR. So it's nice to finally get that done. Next month, it all goes back to ESCR. But anyway.
Nice to see everybody. Take care.
Take care. We need to take a final roll call for committee members. So Ryan, we can do this again and just take a roll call.
Let's go backwards. Troy Velez, Josephine Velez,
Yes.
Robin Chattel,
Yes.
Michael Marino,
Living dangerously, Ryan. Yes.
Ryan, say our names backwards. Last name first.
Valentina Jones,
Yes.
Carlin Chan,
Chan, Carlin.
Yes.
Yaron Altman, David Adams,
Adams, David.
That's yes backwards.
Ryan
Adam.
Gillum, yes.
Gilliam Ryan. Webster K.
I think yes.
Trevor Holland.
Yes.
Holland Trevor.
Alan Trevor. Say,
Thank you. Thank you. Trevor.
thank you, everybody.
Thank
And
you.
be safe,
Thank you. Good
vaccinated
night,
if you haven't
everybody.
already.
Be well.
All
All right,
right,
good
see you in a
night.
couple of weeks.